Han Lin's mind was still foggy when he opened his eyes. Above him were pitch-black roof beams. Beneath him lay a hard wooden bed. A strong herbal stench hung in the air, bitter enough to sting his nose. He stared blankly at the beams for a full 10 seconds. Then he jolted upright. What the hell? Where was this place? Han Lin glanced around. Earthen walls, broken windows. A table missing one leg and propped up by bricks. The entire house was bare, draft seeping in from every crack. He clearly remembered playing video games in his rental apartment a moment earlier. How had he ended up here after blinking? Just then, a flood of memories crashed into his mind, as if someone had force-fed him an entire motion picture. Han Village. Han Lin, 18 years old, a farmer's son known for being lazy. He had been killed by a wild boar. Han Lin, killed by a wild boar? What an embarrassing way to die. Before he could finish complaining, footsteps echoed at the doorway. A middle-aged woman dressed in rough linen cloth walked in carrying a bowl of medicine, her eyes red, obviously fresh from crying. You're awake. She held out the medicine bowl, her face a mix of joy and worry. As Han Lin looked at her face, the memories in his head clicked into place. Wang Guifan, his mother in this life. He parted his lips, feeling awkward, and called out softly, "Mother." Wang Guifan's hand holding the bowl trembled visibly. She stared wide-eyed at Han Lin, as if witnessing something impossible. What did you call me?" Han Lin's heart skipped a beat as he quickly sifted through the imported memories. An embarrassment washed over him. The original Han Lin had never called her mother. He usually yelled old hag at her. Han Lin cleared his throat, scrambling to fix his mistake. My head hurts, my mind's all muddled." Wang Guifan studied him for a long while, suspicion thick in her gaze. In the end, she sighed and passed him the bowl. "Drink this medicine first." Han Lin took it, and took a gulp. He nearly spat everything out. Bitter. Unbearably bitter. What on earth was this? Coptis stewed with gallbladder? He grimaced and forced every drop down. His face crumpled into a tight ball. Watching his reaction, Wang Guifan's mouth twitched, fighting back a smile. "All right. Lie back and rest once you finish. Don't go running off again." With that, she turned and stepped outside. Han Lin sat alone on the bed, waiting quite some time for the overwhelming bitter taste to fade. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and began chanting frantically inside his head. System? System. Dear system, grand system. Show yourself. As an avid reader who had devoured hundreds of web novels, he knew the rules well. Every transmigrator came equipped with a system. You couldn't even call yourself a transmigrator without one. He called out mentally for 30 full seconds. Then, ding. A crisp notification tone echoed in his mind. The fervent blessing through offspring system has bound to the host. Binding is permanent. We wish you a pleasant experience. Han Lin nearly cheered. A blessing through offspring system. He knew exactly what this meant. Have children to grow stronger, marry wives to gain wealth. The more descendants you have, the greater your power and fortune. He'd often thought while reading novels that such a system was every man's ultimate dream. System, what functions do you have? Han Lin asked eagerly. The system replied succinctly. Every child the host fathers grants system rewards. The more descendants, the more generous the rewards. That is all. Han Lin almost laughed out loud. Perfect. He clenched his fists, his heart surging with excitement. Having children was hardly a challenge. Though he'd been a lifelong bachelor in his past life, with this system, finding a wife and raising a family would be simple. But in the next instant, he browsed the memories flooding his mind. His smile froze. Poverty. Crushing poverty. The Han family was famously destitute in Han Village. The three of them scraped by on a few acres of poor farmland, living in the shabbiest earthen house in the whole village. They had to set out basins to catch rainwater whenever storms came. His father Han Tai was an honest farmer, quiet to the point of being taciturn. His mother Wang Guifan was hard-working, yet she could barely make ends meet thanks to the original Han Lin's laziness. Any savings the family scraped together had been squandered by him. With circumstances like these, how could he possibly marry a wife? It was nothing but a fantasy. Han Lin sat on the bed, melancholy settling over him. He glanced down at his current body, thin as a bamboo pole, clear evidence of long-term malnutrition. System, is there a newbie gift pack? Han Lin ventured. No. Han Lin drew a deep breath. Fine. If there wasn't one, so be it. He climbed off the bed, stretched his limbs, and walked to the doorway to peer outside. In the courtyard, Wang Guifan was feeding chickens. Those scrawny old hens were probably the most valuable possessions the Han family owned. Leaning against the doorframe, Han Lin began planning. He had obtained a system, yet he started with zero resources. To marry a wife, he first needed money. If he wanted a young woman to agree to wed him, He at the very least needed to repair the house. Which girl would stay upon seeing these crumbling earthen walls? Mother, Han Lin called out. Wang Guifan turned her head, still unused to hearing him address her this way. Do we have any silver? Wang Guifan's face darkened. None. Not even a little. You stole 2 taels of silver last time to drink in town. Have you forgotten? Han Lin, great. The original owner was partially to blame for their poverty. He scratched his head and asked again. Where's father? He went up the mountain to chop firewood. Wang Guifan replied irritably. He's upset with you and says he'll cut extra wood to sell and pay off your debts. Han Lin's mouth twitched. Debts? The original owner owed money? He quickly sorted through the memories, and his expression turned grim. He owed 800 coins at the town tavern, 300 coins to Butcher Zhang at the village entrance, and even 50 coins to old man Wang who sold tofu. All in all, more than 1 tael of silver. In this world, where a bowl of noodles cost 3 coins, a tael of silver was enough for an ordinary household to live comfortably for months. Han Lin felt his blood pressure rise. He leaned against the doorframe for a moment before a thought suddenly struck him. Mother, are there any immortals around our village? Wang Guifan stared at him as if he had lost his mind. Immortals? Did that wild boar knock sense out of you? We live out in this remote mountain hamlet. Where would immortals come from? Han Lin's heart sank. No immortals? Had he transmigrated into an ordinary ancient world instead of a cultivation realm? But a system had appeared. It could not just be a regular ancient setting. He thought for a moment and asked again. Has anyone ever spoken of strange occurrences nearby? Like people who can fly? Wang Guifan set down the chicken feed basin and walked over to touch Han Lin's forehead. No fever. Why are you spouting nonsense? Han Lin smiled awkwardly. I was just curious. Wang Guifan shot him a glare and went back to her chores. Han Lin stood at the doorway and gazed toward the distant mountains. The village was ringed by tall mountains shrouded in mist, looking rather ethereal. Yet according to the original owner's memories, no villager had ever laid eyes on cultivators. The villagers rose with the sun and rested at dusk. Few of them had ever traveled as far as the county town in their lifetimes. Han Lin stroked his chin. It seemed he could not count on cultivation for now, so his top priorities were clear: earn money, marry a wife, and raise children. As he mulled over his plans, footsteps approached the courtyard gate. A dark-skinned young man poked his head inside. He froze upon seeing Han Lin standing at the doorway. Han Lin, you didn't die? Han Lin sifted through his memories. This was Han Ergu from next door, one of the few peers in the village who still bothered to associate with the original Han Lin. Obviously, Han Lin said, What are you doing standing there? Come in. Han Ergu walked into the courtyard and sized Han Lin up and down repeatedly, clicking his tongue in amazement. I heard the wild boar gored you. I thought you were a goner. The villagers say you're different after waking up. You even called your mother mother. Han Lin. News traveled absurdly fast in this village. Han Ergu looked Han Lin over once more and clicked his tongue. You really survived? I thought the villagers were joking with me. Han Lin rolled his eyes. Were you hoping I'd die? Not at all. Han Ergu grinned, moving closer and lowering his voice. I was thinking if you passed away, I wouldn't have anyone to head into town with. Heading into town. Related memories surfaced in Han Lin's mind. Heading into town meant wandering around the market with Han Ergu and several other idle young men from the village. They roamed market streets, lingered outside gambling halls, and loitered near a popular entertainment quarter. The key word was near. With pockets emptier than their faces, none of them could afford entry to the establishments there. Once Han Ergu had worked up the courage to step toward the entrance, only to be chased away by the madam wielding a broom. She shouted as she chased him. Poor beggar. Take a good look at yourself before you come here. The scene had been utterly humiliating. Recalling all this, Han Lin eyed Han Ergu with undisguised disdain. I'm not going. Han Ergu blinked in surprise. Not going? You used to be the most eager of all of us. That was then, this is now. Han Lin leaned against the doorframe and pointed to the cloth wrapped around his head. Look at me. Do I look fit to travel? Han Ergu glanced at his battered appearance and laughed. Fair enough. That boar hurt you badly. Rest well, and once you recover we can go together. I'm heading into town on my own today. With that, he trotted off. Judging by his direction, he was bound for town once again. Han Lin shook his head. He had no time to idle about with such people. Right now there was only one goal on his mind: marry a wife and have children. He already possessed a system. Failing to have children as soon as possible would be a terrible waste. He turned and walked back into the room, lay down on the bed, and began thinking. Marrying a wife sounded simple in theory, yet incredibly difficult in practice. On one hand, nearly every young man of suitable age in the village had already wed. He understood the full process. On the other hand, his family was penniless. No young woman would agree to move into this ramshackle, drafty earthen house. As Han Lin fretted, he suddenly remembered the system. System, are you absolutely certain there is no newbie gift pack? Ding. No, Han Lin refused to give up. Every other system gives new hosts welcome gifts. Why are you so stingy? The system fell silent and offered no reply. Another thought crossed Han Lin's mind. Wait, why are you named the Fervent Blessing Through Offspring system? What sets you apart from ordinary blessing through offspring systems? What does fervent mean? He waited 3 seconds. The system remained quiet as if it had vanished. System, hello. Han Lin pouted. Fine. It was rather aloof. He stopped pestering the system and combed through the memories in his head, mentally reviewing every unmarried young woman in Han Village. Second daughter Zhang, no? She was powerfully built, her arms thicker than his legs. Chunny Li, also unsuitable. Her skin was as dark as charcoal, though she had white teeth when smiling. The Wang girl. The more he thought, the more discouraged he grew. Were there no decent young women in this village? After racking his brains, one face finally emerged in his thoughts. Chui'er. She lived at the eastern end of the village with only her mother. The two relied solely on each other. Chui'er was not breathtakingly beautiful, yet she had neat features and fair skin. 2 shallow dimples appeared when she smiled, and she spoke with a pleasant voice. Within Han Village, Chui'er was considered the village beauty. Matchmakers came to her home nonstop, nearly wearing out the threshold with all the visitors. Han Lin recalled the original owner's memories. The old Han Lin had once set his sights on Chui'er, not with the intention of marrying her, though he only wanted to tease her. Once he had approached her frivolously at the village entrance. Chui'er's mother had chased him halfway down the lane, swinging a carrying pole. Han Lin's mouth twitched. The original owner had left behind quite a mess. Now that he occupied this body, he needed to rebuild his reputation. Chui'er was his best option within the village. He dared not aim higher. How could he possibly court a wealthy young lady from the county town? She would never spare him a glance. Han Lin was realistic. In his current state, marrying Chui'er would be nothing short of great fortune. But how could he win her hand? So many men came to propose to Chui'er. Many of the suitors from the village were far better off than him. At the very least, their houses did not leak wind and rain. Han Lin lay on the bed, staring at the cobwebs covering the roof beam and thinking carefully. First, he needed to clear all outstanding debts. More than 1 tael of silver. It was not an astronomical sum, yet it was far from trivial. After that, he needed to repair the house. At minimum, seal up all the drafty cracks. Only once these 2 tasks were finished would he have the confidence to send a matchmaker. As he pondered, footsteps sounded at the doorway again. Wang Guifan walked in carrying another bowl of medicine. Drink this. Han Lin accepted it, pinched his nose, and drained it in 1 gulp. Still bitter. The taste made him shudder. Watching his reaction, Wang Guifan's lips twitched, suppressing a smile. Wait, I'll bring your food. Moments later, Wang Guifan returned with a bowl. Han Lin stared in shock. What was this? Instead of white rice, the bowl held coarse yellow grains with visible husks. He rummaged through his memories. This was millet porridge, or millet rice. It paled in comparison to the millet sold in supermarkets in his past life, coarse enough to scrape his throat. As for the side dish, only a few strips of black pickled vegetables, impossible to identify. Han Lin picked up 1 strip and tasted it. It was so salty he nearly gagged. Mother, is this all we eat? Wang Guifan shot him a look. What else did you expect? Do you think you're a young master from a wealthy household? Han Lin fell silent. He lowered his head and picked at the coarse grains. They tasted awful, yet he forced himself to eat. If he refused, he would go hungry. Mid-meal, he suddenly lifted his head. Mother, when will you arrange a wife for me? Wang Guifan's hand holding her bowl froze. She set the bowl down, walked over to Han Lin, and pressed her palm against his forehead. No fever. Han Lin. Mother, I'm not ill. Wang Guifan pulled her hand away and stared at him for a long time. Her expression shifted from confusion to vigilance. What scheme are you plotting now? I truly want to marry a wife. Marry a wife. Wang Guifan let out a bitter laugh. The last time you said that, you tricked me out of 2 taels of silver. You claimed you needed fine new clothes to propose. Where are those clothes? Han Lin. He retrieved another memory. That had indeed happened. The original owner had fabricated a story about wanting to propose marriage to swindle the family's last 2 taels of silver, which he then spent drinking in town. He returned reeking of alcohol, without so much as a scrap of cloth. Han Lin felt heat rise to his cheeks in embarrassment. Mother, this time I mean it. Wang Guifan eyed him warily. There is no money left, not a single coin. Your father treks up the mountain every day to chop firewood. He exhausts himself for just a handful of copper coins. Don't try to think up any tricks. Han Lin opened his mouth to reply, yet all words felt hollow. He sighed and continued eating. Wang Guifan stood beside him for a while. Her guarded expression slowly softened into complexity. This boy had never called her mother before. Now he addressed her properly and spoke of marrying a wife. Had that wild boar knocked some sense into him, or was he plotting another mischievous scheme? She could not be certain. One truth remained clear. The family possessed no money whatsoever. Even if her son truly intended to wed, she could do nothing. Wang Guifan sighed and walked outside. Han Lin sat alone inside the room, chewing coarse millet grains and overly salty pickled vegetables. His mouth tasted salty, and his heart was heavy with bitterness. Poverty. Unbearable poverty. He set down his bowl, lay back on the bed, and stared blankly at the cobwebs on the beam. Chuyer, unpaid debts, a crumbling house, rough millet meals, salty pickles. Every single thing reminded him of his cruel reality. He was penniless. Marry a wife? He should first figure out how to fill his stomach. 7 days passed. It felt neither long nor short. Han Lin had spent so much time confined to bed, he feared mushrooms would start growing on him. Every day consisted of drinking bitter medicine and choking down scratchy millet meals, living like an ascetic. Fortunately, he had a decent physical foundation. As an 18-year-old young man, his body recovered quickly. With Wang Guifan ensuring he took medicine daily, his injuries healed faster than expected. On the morning of the 7th day, Han Lin sat upright in bed and stretched his arms and legs. No pain remained. He flipped off the bed at once with a thud and jumped up and down a few times. Perfect, fully recovered. He had not wasted those 7 days. Every day, he brought up his wish to marry a wife to his parents. For the first 2 days, Wang Guifan assumed he was scheming again. When she realized he was earnest, her suspicion turned to helplessness. Han Tai's reaction was far more straightforward. The honest farmer squatted on the threshold, smoking dry tobacco for a long while, before he finally muttered a sentence. With our family's circumstances, how can we afford to marry Chuyer? Han Lin spoke with unshakable conviction. I don't care. I'm going to marry Chuyer. Han Lin shot him a look, his gaze plainly saying, have you been knocked senseless by a wild boar? He then silently rose, slung his hoe over his shoulder, and headed for the fields. Right then, Han Lin pushed open the wooden door. The courtyard stood empty. Han Tai had gone out to farm before dawn, and after finishing fieldwork, he still needed to chop firewood up in the mountains. Wang Guifan had traveled to the neighboring village to take on needlework to supplement the family income. The pair toiled from dawn till dusk, all to scrape together a few more copper coins. Han Lin stood in the courtyard and drew a deep breath. Then he stepped out of the gate. He walked east toward the village's eastern end and passed several villagers along the way. When they spotted him, they froze for a moment, looks of surprise spreading across their faces. Han Lin, you're well enough to walk about now. I thought you'd be bedridden for at least half a month. Young folk have sturdy constitutions. Han Lin gave them casual replies and did not linger. He had never been a prominent figure in Han Village. The foolish things his previous self had done only made villagers think he was idle and aimless. Yet few paid him much mind. After walking for roughly the span of 1 incense stick's burn, Han Lin reached the eastern edge of the village. He caught sight of the old locust tree from afar. A figure sat beneath it. It was Chuyer. Dressed in a floral cloth blouse, she sat in the shade, holding a handful of melon seeds and cracking them leisurely. Her legs swayed back and forth, and she seemed to be in high spirits. Han Lin straightened his collar, took a deep breath, and strode toward her. Chuyer heard the footsteps and lifted her head to glance over. When she saw Han Lin, her expression did not shift, as if she had spotted a blade grass by the roadside. She lowered her head and continued cracking melon seeds. Han Lin reached her side and plopped down onto the ground. Chuyer shifted aside. Han Lin shuffled closer to her again. Chuyer frowned and shot him a sideways glance. What are you doing? Han Lin cleared his throat and got straight to the point. Chuyer, will you be my wife? Chuyer's movements grinding melon seeds came to an abrupt halt. Then cough, cough, cough. She choked on the seeds, coughing until her face flushed red, and melon seeds scattered all over the ground from her hand. Once she caught her breath, she twisted sharply to glare at Han Lin, her eyes wide as copper bells. Han Lin, have you no shame? No, Han Lin answered without hesitation. Dignity? Could dignity fill an empty stomach? Right now, only one thought occupied his mind. To marry a wife, start a family, and claim his reward. Face meant nothing to him. Chuyer was rendered speechless by his shameless attitude. It took her a long moment to find her voice. She drew a deep breath and pointed a finger at him. Leave at once and stop pestering me. Han Lin did not move an inch. Instead, he edged even nearer. Chuyer, I mean every word. Just tell me, what do I need to do to marry you? Chuyer looked him up and down. Her gaze was much the same as if she were observing a beggar on the roadside. Han Lin, do you know how many men want to marry me? I know. And you still dare to come? Chuyer huffed and began counting on her fingers. Second son of the Li family at the east end of the village. The butcher Zhang's boy from the west end, and even the village elder's son. Every single one of them is better off than you. Han Lin remained calm. Where do I rank? Chuyer laughed, a bitter, exasperated laugh. You? You are not even in the running. She tossed the melon seed husks in her hand onto the ground and clapped her palms clean. Very well. You want to know what it will take for me to marry you? Simple. A bride price. Han Lin's heart sank. How much? Chuyer held up 5 fingers. 50 taels of silver. Han Lin's brows knitted together. He had expected the bride price to be steep, yet he had not imagined it would be this high. He had run the numbers before. The family owed just over 1 tael of silver in debts, and even that sum would take his parents years to repay. 50 taels? In this world, where a bowl of noodles cost 3 copper coins, 50 taels would let an ordinary household live comfortably for a full decade. Seeing him frown, Chuyer curled her lip and delivered another blow. The village elder's son is willing to offer 60 taels. I'm only asking you for 50 out of neighborly courtesy. Han Lin fell silent. He silently did the calculations in his head. His father could chop firewood up the mountain from dawn till dusk to earn 20 copper coins a day. His mother earned 15 copper coins daily doing needlework for others. Together, they made 35 copper coins each day. 1 tael of silver equaled 1,000 copper coins. 50 taels amounted to 50,000 copper coins. Even if his parents spent nothing on food and drink and saved every copper coin they earned, it would take them almost 4 years. For years. He could not wait that long. When Chuyer saw him fall quiet, a triumphant smile tugged at her lips. Well, have you given up? If you have, be off. And don't interrupt my seed cracking. Han Lin stood to his feet. Chuyer assumed he would slink away in defeat and prepared to resume cracking melon seeds. Instead, Han Lin turned to face her, his expression earnest as he spoke 3 words. Gold digger. Chuyer blinked in confusion. What kind of digger? Gold digger. Chuyer wrinkled her brows. She did not understand a single word of the phrase, yet her intuition told her it was an insult. Are you insulting me? Han Lin offered no reply. He stuffed his hands in his pockets and turned to leave. Chuyer stared at his retreating back, seething. She grabbed a handful of melon seeds and hurled them toward him. Han Lin, stop right there. What was that you just said? Han Lin did not glance back. As he walked, he mulled things over. 50 taels of silver. The number weighed on him like a massive stone. Relying on his parents farming and cutting firewood, he would never scrape the sum together in his lifetime. What was more, the village elder's son was ready to pay 60 taels. Even if he somehow came up with 50, there was no guarantee Chuyer would choose him. Chuyer had spoken the truth earlier. The village elder's son was superior to him in nearly every way. Yet there was a thought Chuyer had kept to herself. Deep down, she had always thought Han Lin was the most handsome young man in the village. He was far better looking than the stout son of the village elder. But what good was good looks? Could good looks put food on the table? Could good looks build a house? Her mother was right. A woman marries a man to have food and clothing. No matter how handsome Han Lin was, his family was so poor they did not even have intact walls. Would she marry him just to starve? That was why she would rather wed the village elder's overweight son. At the very least, he could guarantee she would never go hungry. Han Lin had no idea what Chuyer was thinking, nor did he care. Only one question occupied his mind now. How could he get 50 taels of silver? When he returned home, the courtyard remained empty. Han Tai was still chopping firewood in the mountains, and Wang Guifan had not yet come back from the neighboring village. He sat alone on the threshold, staring toward the mist-shrouded mountains in the distance. 50 taels. The system had not given him any starting rewards. His family had nothing. The only remotely valuable possessions were a few old hens, which would not sell for more than a handful of copper coins. Han Lin massaged his temples. Why was marrying a wife so difficult? Han Lin sat on the threshold for a full quarter of an hour. Only one word circled endlessly in his mind. Money. 50 taels of silver. In Han Village, a person could spend their whole life farming and cutting firewood without ever earning that much. He needed another way to earn it. He stood and paced back and forth across the courtyard. Suddenly, he halted. Wait a minute. He was a transmigrator. He carried 5,000 years of poetry and prose in his head. Works by Li Bai, Du Fu, Su Shi, Xan Qiji. Any poem he pulled out would be an immortal masterpiece. What if people in this world loved poetry as well? If he presented a few poems, wouldn't wealthy gentlemen scramble to offer him silver? The more Han Lin thought about it, the more feasible the plan seemed. In all the novels he had read, transmigrators before him had done exactly this. A single poem could earn dozens of taels, and with luck, meeting someone who appreciated literature might bring hundreds. A smile crept onto his lips. He would act at once. Without further hesitation, Han Lin hurried toward the village entrance. The town lay some distance away. Walking would take more than 1 hour. His injuries had only just healed. He did not want to exhaust himself again. It would be ideal if he could catch a ride on an ox cart. Luck favored him. When he reached the village gate, an ox cart was parked there. The driver was a tanned middle-aged man, busy loading bundles of hemp rope onto the cart. Han Lin recognized him. Fourth Uncle Li, who occasionally hauled goods into town to sell. Fourth Uncle. Han Lin approached with a broad grin. Heading into town? Can you give me a lift? Fourth Uncle Li glanced back at him, clearly unwilling. Are you going to fool around in town again? I won't take you. Fourth Uncle, don't say that. Am I that sort of person? Yes. Han Lin was momentarily lost for words, yet shamelessness was his strong suit. He quickly drew near once more. Fourth Uncle, I truly won't fool around this time. I have serious business. I'm still recovering from my injury and can't walk far. Give me a ride, and I'll treat you to wine later. Fourth Uncle Li looked him up and down. You'll treat me to wine? Where will you get the money? I don't have it now, but I will soon. Fourth Uncle Li laughed at his bold claim, shook his head, and finally relented. Climb aboard. Save your chatter. Han Lin scrambled onto the cart and settled down among the hemp rope bundles, feeling relieved. The ox cart trundled slowly along the road, rocking gently enough to make him sleepy. Leaning against the rope bundles, Han Lin planned his next move once they reached town. First, he would find a restaurant. Restaurants were where scholars gathered, and the owners often appreciated literary works. Preferably one adorned with scrolls and paintings, the sort of place whose owner loved to cultivate an air of refinement. He would seek out the owner and strike a deal. As he pondered, the ox cart rounded a bend, and a familiar figure appeared beside the road. Wang Guifan was returning from the neighboring village after finishing her needlework, a cloth bundle tucked under her arm as she hurried along. She heard the creak of the ox cart and glanced up casually. Her footsteps came to a stop. She rubbed her eyes. The person sitting at the back of the cart looked just like her son. She looked again carefully. Sure enough, it was him. Han Lin. Wang Guifan shouted at once. Stop right there. Han Lin had been absorbed in planning his poetry scheme and jumped in fright. He turned and saw his mother. Mother, where are you off to? Wang Guifan quickened her pace to chase after the cart, her face a mixture of anger and anxiety. That morning before leaving home, she had thought her son had settled down lately and might truly have turned over a new leaf. Yet in the blink of an eye, he was heading for town again. I'm going into town to look around, Han Lin said. Look around. Wang Guifan's expression darkened. Are you planning to visit those disreputable spots again? Your wounds have barely healed, and you rush out. Do you wish to drive me to despair? Mother, I'm just wandering around. I won't get into trouble, I promise. Wandering around? That's what you say every single time. Han Lin felt a twinge of guilt, yet he had already set his plan in motion and could not turn back. Mother, go home first. I will be back soon. He then urged Fourth Uncle Li. Keep going, don't stop. Fourth Uncle Li glanced at Wang Guifan, then back at Han Lin. He sighed and flicked the reins, and the ox cart continued forward. Wang Guifan stood by the roadside, watching the cart grow distant. Anger faded into disappointment on her face. She shook her head and muttered to herself. I thought he'd really changed. Old habits die hard. Marry a wife? It's nothing but empty talk. He only wants to find ways to waste money. She tightened her grip on the cloth bundle beneath her arm and turned toward home. Inside the bundle were the 12 copper coins she had earned that day. She had hoped to save coin by coin, in case her son really reformed and wished to marry, so she could contribute toward the bride price. Now it seemed she should not hold out any hope. Sitting on the ox cart, Han Lin felt a pang of remorse. But then he told himself, once he earned silver and returned, his mother would change her opinion. Words meant nothing. Silver would speak for itself. The ox cart rumbled onward for nearly an hour before they arrived at the city gate. Calling it a city was generous. It was far from the grand, ancient metropolis Han Lin had imagined. There was a city wall, yet it stood barely 2 zhang high, with tiles crumbling away in many places, looking worn and shabby. 2 soldiers dozed beneath the city archway, making no effort to check travelers. Han Lin jumped down from the cart, thanked Fourth Uncle Li, and stepped into the town. The streets were far livelier than the village. Stalls lined both sides, vendors selling vegetables, cloth and sundries, their cries echoing everywhere. The road was paved with bluestone slabs, pockmarked with holes and worn smooth from years of use. Han Lin looked around. This place was at best a county seat, a world away from the bustling cities he pictured. Still, it was better than Han Village. He had no time to sightsee and headed straight for the restaurant district. From all the novels he had read, restaurants were gathering spots for literati. Wealthy proprietors loved to cultivate an air of refinement, hanging scrolls on the walls and placing collections of poetry on tables, pretending to be lovers of culture. Places like this were perfect for selling poems. After asking passers-by for directions, Han Lin found the largest restaurant in town. Largest was a relative term. It was merely a 2-story wooden building with a plaque hanging above the entrance inscribed with 3 characters, Drunken Immortal Restaurant. 2 attendants stood at the door, one tall and lean, the other short and stocky. Han Lin straightened his collar and stepped forward to enter. "Hey, hold on." The tall attendant darted forward to block him, looking astonished. "What do you want?" Han Lin straightened his back. "I've come to dine and drink." "What else?" The tall attendant sized him up and sneered. "You?" He gestured toward Han Lin's coarse cloth robe, the fabric faded pale, the cuffs frayed. "Judging by your clothes, you can't even afford a bowl of noodles. How dare you say you're here to drink at our Drunken Immortal Restaurant?" The shorter attendant stepped forward and chimed in with a grin. "That's right. Do you know how much a pot of wine costs here? 30 copper coins. Enough to feed your whole family for 3 days." Han Lin took a deep breath. Do not grow angry. Looking down on common folk was a timeless habit. He folded his hands behind his back, tilted his chin upward, and struck a profound pose. "You two fail to recognize a learned man. I am a scholar, come to speak with your proprietor about a refined matter." The 2 attendants exchanged glances. Then they burst into loud laughter. "Ha ha, a scholar." The tall attendant slapped his thigh. "Dressed like a peasant laborer, and you claim to be a scholar?" The shorter attendant laughed until he could barely stand upright. "If you are a scholar, then I am the top imperial scholar." Ha ha. Hearing the commotion, passers-by gathered to watch. Han Lin stood in front of the restaurant gate, stared at by the crowd, and embarrassment crept over him. This was not how the story was supposed to unfold. According to the novels, at this moment, a wealthy merchant or a noble young lady with an eye for talent ought to step forward to rescue him. Instead, he could not even pass through the entrance. He scanned the onlookers. Every one of them was enjoying the spectacle, some pointing and whispering. Han Lin gritted his teeth. Enough. Staying here would only bring more humiliation. He lowered his hands, ducked his head, squeezed through the crowd, and hurried away from the restaurant gate. The attendant's mocking laughter followed him. "Come back soon, scholar. Remember to change your clothes." Ha ha. Han Lin walked 2 full streets before stopping. He leaned against a stone wall and took several deep breaths to calm his burning frustration. Humiliating. Utterly humiliating. He glanced down at his clothes. Coarse linen, worn cloth shoes, hair loosely tied in a bun. He looked every inch the village farmer. No wonder they had turned him away. Depressed, Han Lin wandered the streets, looking left and right. The restaurant plan was dead. He could not even get inside, let alone sell poems. He needed another opportunity to earn money somewhere in this town. Han Lin wandered the streets for most of the day. His legs ached from walking, yet he had not found a single way to make money. He tried asking a cloth shop if they needed an accountant, but the shopkeeper glanced at him and sent him away without letting him touch the ledgers. He tried the grain shop, inquiring about work hauling goods as a laborer. The boss squeezed his thin arms and waved him off. He even tried setting up a street stall writing letters for villagers, only to discover he could recognize the script of this world, yet his handwriting was messy and crooked, worse than that of a 7- or 8-year-old schoolchild. After one rejection after another, Han Lin squatted on the roadside, sinking into deep self-doubt. In all those novels, transmigrators gained fame and wealth effortlessly by reciting a single poem. Why was he not even allowed inside a restaurant? He sighed and wandered onward without purpose. As he walked, he noticed the surrounding streetscape looked familiar. He lifted his head and saw a 2-story wooden building standing before him. Red lanterns hung high, carved windows half open, and the sound of stringed music and women's cheerful chatter drifted out from within. Several young women dressed in colorful attire stood at the entrance, waving silk handkerchiefs to greet passers-by. "Sir, won't you come inside and enjoy some music? Esteemed guest, please step in." Han Lin's mouth twitched. Good grief, how had he ended up here? Spring Breeze Studio, one of the places the original owner knew best. In the past, whenever Han Lin and his worthless friends came into town, 8 times out of 10 they would head here, only to stand outside watching. Truly, they were penniless and could not afford to cross the threshold, forced only to gaze from afar to satisfy their curiosity. Han Lin wanted to turn around and leave, yet his feet froze in place. He found a spot against the wall and squatted down, watching the entrance of Spring Breeze Studio from a distance. He had to admit, the young ladies of the studio were indeed beautiful. Several welcoming attendants stood by the entrance, neatly dressed with graceful figures, fair complexions, and eyes curved like crescent moons whenever they smiled. The young woman in the pink dress at the front stood out the most. Every gesture carried a natural grace, and merely standing there drew the gaze of everyone along the street. Han Lin could not help but sigh to himself. No wonder the original host visited this place every few days. Who could blame him? He was watching intently when a heavy slap landed suddenly on his shoulder. Han Lin jolted in fright, nearly tumbling onto the ground. He spun around and saw a familiar face grinning right up close. Han Ergu. Hee. Han Ergu snickered, revealing his uneven teeth. You've barely recovered from your injury, and you're already here admiring the performers? A wave of awkwardness washed over Han Lin. He scratched the back of his head and cleared his throat. I'm just passing by. Han Ergu said nothing, merely staring at him with an amused smile. His expression practically screamed, I know what you're thinking. Growing uncomfortable under that gaze, Han Lin prepared to leave, when Han Ergu leaned forward and lowered his voice. Want to head inside? Han Lin abruptly stood upright. Go inside. Do you have money? Han Ergu scratched his head and shook it honestly. Not a single coin. Han Lin rolled his eyes and squatted back down. Why even bring it up then? Hold on a minute. Han Ergu drew nearer again, speaking mysteriously. I've got an idea. We can get inside, and even earn money at the same time. Han Lin glanced sideways at him. What plan? Han Ergu nodded toward the plump woman standing by the entrance of Spring Breeze Pavilion. See that, madam? She's looking for laborers to move things, paying 5 copper coins. Han Lin paused. 5 copper coins. It was not a large sum, but the key draw was getting inside the pavilion. He glanced at the half-open gate of Spring Breeze Pavilion, then looked back at Han Ergu. What exactly needs moving? Just tables, chairs, and benches. The female performers can't shift them on their own, so they're hiring porters. Han Ergu rubbed his hands together. We'll carry everything, split the money afterward, and get to look around inside. Isn't that perfect? Han Lin thought it over. According to the original host's memories, he had visited Spring Breeze Pavilion before. Yet he had only watched performances from afar and never once sat down to enjoy a cup of tea there. As for himself, in his 2 lifetimes combined, he had never set foot in an entertainment venue of this kind. He had only seen scenes like this on screen. Now a chance to experience it firsthand lay before him. Let's go. Han Lin stood and brushed dirt off his trousers. The two walked over to the entrance. Han Ergu hurried up to the plump madam and bowed respectfully. Madam, we've come to offer our help. The plump madam turned and sized them up with sharp, shrewd eyes. Her gaze swept over Han Ergu without much interest, and she even frowned slightly. Then she turned to Han Lin. Her eyes lingered on his face for a moment. Though the young man wore tattered clothes, he had handsome, regular features, far better looking than the man beside him. The madam nodded. Very well, follow me. Carry the tables and chairs from the backyard up to the 2nd floor. Don't wander aimlessly, and don't touch anything, or you'll regret it. Yes, madam. Han Ergu nodded repeatedly. Han Lin followed him across the threshold into Spring Breeze Pavilion. As soon as he stepped inside, warm air wrapped around him, carrying a soft blend of floral perfume and wine. Han Lin's eyes widened. The great hall blazed with lamplight. On the central stage, 6 young women in flowing gowns danced gracefully. Their garments fluttered lightly as they moved, showcasing elegant limbs with every twist and turn. Around the tables below sat wealthy guests dressed in fine silks, chatting and toasting one another cheerfully. Han Lin froze by the doorway, utterly captivated. He possessed all of the original host's memories, yet recollections could not compare to witnessing the scene in person. The sight struck him with incredible force. Han Ergu laughed at his stunned expression. You don't need to gawk like that. We've gotten inside before. Han Lin swallowed and dragged his eyes away. It's different. Back then I only ever watched from outside. Han Ergu considered this and conceded the point. They were penniless. Most days they simply loitered outside the gate to watch from afar. On rare occasions they managed to slip in to run errands or carry goods, only to be chased out straight after finishing work. They could never afford to request a companion, let alone buy a cup of tea. They walked through the hall toward the backyard. Han Lin craned his neck in every direction, overwhelmed by all there was to see. Along the staircases and corridors walked many young women in lovely attire. Some carried wine pots, others held folding fans, chatting casually with guests. The floral fragrance hung thick in the air, and Han Lin thought it smelled wonderful. Stacks of tables and chairs filled the backyard, leftover furnishings from a recent banquet that had not yet been tidied away. The plump madam gestured toward the pile. Bring all of these to the innermost room on the second floor. Come find me up front once you're done to collect your pay. With that, she swayed off. Han Ergu rolled up his sleeves, lifted a table, and headed toward the stairs. Han Lin picked up 2 chairs and followed behind him. They trudged up and down the stairs 7 or 8 times, soaked in sweat. Every time they passed through the hall, Han Lin slowed his pace to watch the dancers on stage. After transporting the final chair, Han Lin leaned against the second-floor balustrade to catch his breath. From this vantage point, he could clearly see the performers below. The woman in pink spun in circles, her skirt billowing to reveal her slender calves. Han Lin stared, transfixed. Han Ergu walked over and jabbed him with his elbow. Enough staring. She won't spare you a second glance. Let's go claim our wages. Han Lin tore his gaze away reluctantly and followed Han Ergu downstairs. The madam waited for them in the front hall. Seeing their sweat-soaked forms, she pulled 5 copper coins from her sleeve. Here, 2 coins each, and the extra one is a tip. Han Ergu took the coins, grinning widely. Thank you, madam. By the time they stepped out of Spring Breeze Pavilion, dusk was drawing near. Han Ergu slapped 2 copper coins into Han Lin's palm. Your share. Han Lin stared down at the sweat-stained coins resting in his hand. He had labored for hours to earn such a small amount. Not enough even for a bowl of noodles. Yet for some reason, he felt lighthearted. Perhaps because he had finally entered the famous pavilion at last. Even if he could not afford any services. Han Ergu chuckled beside him. Was it worth it? You got to watch the performances and earn money too. Han Lin tucked the coins inside his clothing and smiled faintly. It wasn't bad. Han Lin stood outside Spring Breeze Pavilion, clutching the 2 copper coins, a smile still lingering on his lips. A gust of evening wind swept over him, and he shuddered. His mind suddenly cleared. Wait a minute. What had he set out to do today? Earn money, marry Chuier, start a family, and receive rewards from his system. How had he wasted the whole afternoon watching performances here? Han Lin slapped his own cheeks, berating himself inwardly. Han Lin, you have a system. Someday you will cultivate immortality and seek the eternal path. How can you indulge in such trivial mortal pastimes? These performers are merely ordinary people after all. He took a deep breath, secured the coins safely in his clothes, and his expression turned solemn. Han Ergu watched his shifting expressions, thoroughly confused. What's wrong with you? Did your face cramp up? Nothing. Han Lin waved his hand, putting on a profound air. I'm just pondering certain matters. What matters? You wouldn't understand even if I told you. Han Ergu rolled his eyes and chose not to press further. He glanced upward. The sun had dipped halfway below the horizon, and shadows spread across the streets. It's getting late. Should we head back? If we miss the shared ox cart, we'll have to walk all the way home. Han Lin thought for a moment and nodded. Let's go. They walked side by side toward the city gate. Street vendors were beginning to pack up their stalls, and pedestrians were growing scarce. Han Ergu chattered as they walked. Today turned out pretty well, 2 copper coins. We can try our luck here again tomorrow. Han Lin did not reply. His mind raced, calculating ways to make money. He had wandered the city all day. Restaurants refused to hire him. Shops had no openings, and he lacked the skills to set up a stall. All he had earned was these 2 coins. What could 2 coins buy? It was nowhere near enough to cover even a fraction of Chuier's betrothal gift. Lost in thought, he suddenly heard a scream up ahead. Help! It was a young woman's voice, sharp with panic. Han Lin and Han Ergu halted simultaneously. They exchanged a look, then turned toward the source of the sound. A dark alley lay a short distance ahead. Several burly men blocked its entrance, gathered in a circle around something inside. The cry for help came from within that alley. Han Ergu's face paled instantly. He grabbed Han Lin's arm and lowered his voice urgently. Don't look. Let's leave. Han Lin frowned and stood his ground. Someone is calling for help. I heard her. Han Ergu's tone grew even quieter, tense with anxiety. But look at those men, every single one towering and muscular. We stand no chance against them with our builds. He tugged Han Lin harder. Troubles like this in town are none of our business, and we can't afford to get involved. Hurry away. Han Lin fell silent for a second. He knew Han Ergu was right. His frame was thin and gaunt, fresh off recovering from injury. He might struggle to defeat a chicken, let alone fight several strong men. What was more, this world was very likely one of cultivation. Though he had yet to encounter cultivators, the existence of his system proved it. In a cultivation world, ordinary humans were as insignificant as ants. One more or less dead mortal meant nothing to anyone. He should not risk his life for a stranger. Let's go. Han Lin turned to depart. Just then, The young woman's voice rang out once more from the alley, louder and clearer this time. Sirs, I beg you, save me. Han Lin froze mid-step. The men surrounding the alley heard the plea as well and twisted their heads to glare fiercely at the two of them. A bearded giant stepped forward. He stood at least 185 centimeters tall, his arms thicker than Han Lin's thighs. He spat on the ground and pointed at Han Lin and Han Ergu. You two country bumpkins. What are you staring at? Get out of here at once. Anger flared up inside Han Lin. Country bumpkin? He had been called that outside the restaurant earlier, and now again here. Was that the only insult these people knew? He clenched his fists, then relaxed them. There was no point. He could not win a fight, not in his current state. Han Lin drew a deep breath and motioned for Han Ergu to leave. But while the men turned to shout at them, a small gap opened in their circle. The trapped young woman's eyes flashed with resolve. In the next instant, she darted through the opening like a startled wildcat. She sprinted for all she was worth. Her legs blurred beneath her skirts as she raced straight toward Han Lin and Han Ergu. Before Han Lin could react, she shot past him in a flash, stirring a gust of wind. Han Lin stared blankly. He turned his head. The young woman was already dozens of meters away, running faster still. With no intention of slowing down, Han Lin stood dumbfounded. What was happening? She was screaming for help, yet she ran quicker than a rabbit. The men snapped out of their daze. The bearded leader roared. After her, the group charged past Han Lin and Han Ergu. One brute, annoyed by their presence blocking the way, shoved Han Lin so hard he stumbled. Han Ergu caught him. They stood watching the pursuers race after the girl toward the city gate, both thoroughly confused. Far ahead, the young woman glanced back. Her gaze cut straight through the chasing men and locked onto Han Lin. Then, she glared at him. It was unmistakably a glare. Her eyes brimmed with disdain, as if blaming them for standing by and doing nothing. Han Lin felt a surge of exasperation. Wait, you can run far faster than me, and you dare to glare? Who exactly needed rescuing here? Before he could voice his thoughts, the crowd vanished around a street corner. Han Ergu swallowed hard beside him. That girl, she sure can run. Han Lin nodded. Faster than me. Faster than those big men too. Indeed. Silence stretched between them for a moment. Han Ergu suddenly realized something and slapped his thigh. Wait. They're all heading for the city gate. Our ox cart. Han Lin's expression shifted. Run quickly. The two sprinted toward the city gate. They could not afford to miss the final ox cart. If they did, they would be forced to trudge along mountain roads in the dark for more than an hour. As he ran, Han Lin grumbled inwardly. What an absurd day. He came into town hoping to earn money, spent hours watching performances, and now he was racing alongside a band of thugs. The script of the hero saving the maiden seemed to have flipped entirely on its head. Panting heavily, they reached the city gate and spotted the ox cart parked by the roadside, the same one they had ridden into town. Li Laosi sat dozing on the cart, while the ox grazed leisurely on grass nearby. Han Ergu shouted with relief and rushed forward. Uncle C, wait for us. Li Laosi woke with a start and rubbed his eyes as he looked them over. Why are you two boys sweating buckets? Han Lin clambered onto the cart and slumped onto a pile of hemp rope, gasping for breath. Don't ask. We ran into a bunch of madmen. He glanced back toward the city. The young woman and her pursuers were long out of sight. He wondered if she had escaped. Judging by her speed, she should be fine. After all, she ran quicker than he did. Han Ergu climbed aboard as well and patted Li Laosi's shoulder. Uncle C, let's depart right away. Li Laosi yawned and shook the reins. The ox cart trundled slowly out through the city gate. The last streaks of daylight faded over the horizon. Darkness closed in, leaving only the rumble of wooden wheels rolling over the dirt road. Han Lin leaned back against the hemp rope and watched the city gate recede into the distance. He let out a quiet laugh. Han Ergu turned toward him. What are you laughing at? Nothing. Han Lin shook his head. Just thinking today has been quite interesting. Interesting my foot. We nearly landed ourselves in trouble. Han Lin fell silent and closed his eyes to rest. His mind kept wandering back to the fleet-footed young woman. Who could she have been? And who were the men chasing her? He pushed the thought aside. None of it concerned him. His top priority remained unchanged. Earn money, marry Chui'er, and build a family. Everything else was trivial. The ox cart trundled slowly along the mountain road, night having fully descended. Han Lin leaned against a pile of hemp rope, clutching 2 copper coins in his pocket, in fairly high spirits. He had not earned much money today, but at the very least, he had visited the pleasure quarters and gained new experiences. Besides, that swift young girl had proven to be an amusing interlude. Beside him, Han Ergu was already fast asleep, snoring thunderously, saliva hanging from the corner of his mouth as he dreamed of something pleasant. When the ox cart halted at the village entrance, Han Lin shook Han Ergu awake. We're here. Stop dreaming of weddings. Han Ergu blinked groggily, wiped the saliva from his chin, and jumped down from the cart. The two parted ways at the village gate. Han Ergu headed toward his own home, while Han Lin strolled leisurely homeward. The 2 copper coins tucked safely in his pocket. The village lay quiet, interrupted now and then by distant barks of dogs. Moonlight spilled over the dirt track, casting enough light to find one's way. As Han Lin walked, he pondered whether he ought to head into town again tomorrow to try his luck. Lost in thought, a voice suddenly called out from behind him. Hey! Han Lin froze in his tracks. You rascal! Where do you think you're going? Han Lin spun around abruptly. Beneath the moonlight, a young woman stood a short distance behind him, arms folded, a distinctly unfriendly smirk playing on her lips. It was the same girl he had seen being chased by several burly men in town earlier that day. Han Lin stumbled backward several paces in shock. You, what are you doing here? The young girl advanced slowly toward him, every step carrying an air of pressure. Her smile looked unusually menacing under the moon. Han Lin's back pressed against a tree trunk. He could retreat no farther. Instinctively, he held his arms up before his chest. What do you want? Are you after money, or something else? The girl paused mid-step. I've no silver to give you. Han Lin rattled off quickly. If you're looking for anything more, we can at least discuss it. The girl stumbled, nearly losing her balance. Once steady again, she looked Han Lin up and down, disdain practically radiating from her gaze. Have you no shame at all? Han Lin said nothing. You're not bad looking, I'll admit. The girl pointed at him bluntly. But you're as thin as a bamboo pole, dressed like a beggar. What exactly do you think you have to offer? You've neither wealth nor standing. Han Lin grew awkward at her unsparing mockery. He lowered his arms and cleared his throat. Very well. I have neither money nor merit. So why are you following me? I'm nothing but a poor man with merely 2 to my name. You can take them if you want. The girl let out a huff, ignoring the offer of money and stepping closer. I want to know, back in town, why didn't you help me? Han Lin stared in confusion. Logically speaking, the girl declared solemnly. Shouldn't you have rushed forward for a classic scene of a hero saving a maiden? Han Lin stared blankly at her. He fell silent for 2 beats, then asked a pointed question. Do you honestly need someone to come to your rescue? The girl opened her mouth, then fell silent as well. A strange hush hung in the air. Han Lin pressed his advantage. I saw everything clearly. You slipped right through those men, running faster than a hare, darting straight past me. Those fellows could not even catch the hem of your clothes. And you claim you needed saving? The girl's jaw twitched. What does it matter whether I needed help or not? She threw up her hands, resorting to petty obstinacy. Your failure to assist me means your morals are lacking. Han Lin laughed at her strange logic. So if I hadn't stepped in, I'm morally bankrupt? What if I'd charged in and gotten beaten to death? Who would compensate me then? The girl snorted and turned her head away, refusing to speak. Han Lin had no desire to argue further. He just wanted to send this troublesome visitor on her way. He stood straight, feet together, and bowed deeply at the waist. My apologies, it was my fault. Will that satisfy you? The gesture was so obviously half-hearted that even the village dogs could sense his insincerity. The girl glared at his unbothered attitude, seething with frustration. Han Lin straightened, brushed dust from his hands, and turned to leave. He had only taken 2 steps. Stop. Han Lin rolled his eyes and glanced back, openly impatient. What else? The girl did not speak at once. Instead, she studied him from head to toe, her gaze traveling over his rough spun clothes, his mud-caked cloth shoes, and the ramshackle village stretching out behind him. Judging by your appearance, she said slowly, you must be very poor. Han Lin regarded her as if she were an idiot. I am poor, he gritted out. Must you state it so plainly? A meaningful smile tugged at the girl's lips. I can pay you silver. Han Lin halted. Let me stay at your house for a while. The girl glanced over her surroundings, seemingly assessing the village's living conditions. What do you say? Han Lin's eyes shifted as he thought. He did not agree immediately, asking plainly, how much? The girl held up one finger. After a pause, she raised a second. 10 taels. Han Lin's heart skipped a beat, though he kept his expression calm, watching her expectantly. Seeing his silence, the girl assumed the sum was too low and frowned. 20 taels. Han Lin still said nothing. 50 taels. Han Lin remained quiet, though he swallowed hard. The girl gritted her teeth. She glanced out over the dark mountain village and the shadowed mountain ranges in the distance, seemingly weighing something over in her mind. I'll give you 120 taels. Do we have a deal? Han Lin's eyes lit up instantly. He strode quickly to stand before her, grinning widely. It's a deal. The girl was startled by how swiftly his demeanor shifted. Staring at his beaming face, she suddenly felt a twinge of regret. Had she offered too much? 120 taels would be enough for this destitute man to wed 10 wives in the village. But the words had already left her lips, and she could not very well take them back. Lead the way, the girl ordered. Right away. Han Lin spun on his heel, walking ahead with great enthusiasm. This way, watch out for stones on the path. I haven't asked for your name yet, miss. Following behind him, the girl replied coolly in 3 words. Nalan Yinran. Han Lin paused for a split second. Nalan Yinran? He sifted through the original host's memories. The town held no prominent clans bearing the surname Nalan. At the very least, the former Han Lin had never heard of them. Still, it mattered little. The 120 taels of silver were real, and that was all that counted. A lovely name. Han Lin flattered her as they walked. Miss Nalan, my home is humble, but it is kept clean. You will be comfortable there. Nalan Yinran paid him no heed, merely following and observing the shabby little village. The settlement was small, houses scattered sparsely at the foot of the mountains, mostly adobe huts with dim candlelight seeping through their windows. It was plain to see this was a place of extreme poverty. She curled her lip, lost in thought. Han Lin brought her to the gate of his courtyard and pushed open the creaky wooden door. An oil lamp burned inside, faint yellow light spilling out through the cracks. Han Tai and Wang Guifan sat at the table eating. On the table sat a dish of pickled vegetables and 2 bowls of coarse grain rice. Han Tai's face looked grim in the lamplight. He had heard the gate creak and knew his troublesome son had returned. That reckless boy? Han Tai slammed his palm on the table. Gallivanting in town until this hour once again. He whirled around angrily. Then his expression froze. Wang Guifan turned to look as well. She froze too. Han Lin stood in the doorway. Behind him stood an elegantly dressed young woman. The light was too dim to make out her features clearly, but the silk of her robes was far beyond anything village girls could afford. Han Lin smiled broadly and waved toward the room. Father, mother, I'm home. Han Tai's jaw went slack, and his chopsticks clattered onto the table. Wang Guifan nearly dropped her bowl. The pair looked from Han Lin to Nalan Yinran, then back to Han Lin again. Identical thoughts raced through both their minds. Had this boy traveled to town and brought a young lady back with him? Silence filled the room for 3 full seconds. Han Tai's chopsticks had fallen onto the table, bouncing once before rolling across the floor. He did not even bend to retrieve them. Wang Guifan's hands froze mid-air, her eyes fixed on the young woman behind Han Lin. This girl was not wearing rough homespun cloth. She had seen fabric like this at the cloth shop in town, silk, outrageously costly. Dozens of one for a single foot. How could someone clad in such finery arrive at their poor little village? Han Tai recovered first and cleared his throat, hastily standing. He rose so abruptly his knee knocked against the table leg, sending a sharp pain shooting through him, yet he dared not rub it. Wang Guifan set down her bowl at once, wiping her hands self-consciously on her apron. She turned to Han Lin and lowered her voice. Who is this young lady? Han Lin glanced back at Nalan Yinran before facing his parents, his tone perfectly natural. Mother, she is a friend of mine. She hopes to stay with us for a time. A friend. Han Tai and Wang Guifan exchanged a glance. Since when had their son made friends of such standing? Han Tai opened his mouth to speak, but Nalan Yinran stepped forward and gave a slight bow. Uncle, auntie. Her voice was clear, her demeanor proper. All words died on Han Tai's lips. Ah, welcome, welcome. Han Tai nodded repeatedly, wrinkles crowding across his face. Please do not stand on ceremony, young lady. Wang Guifan nodded along, wearing a warm smile. Though her mind brimmed with questions, a guest deserved courtesy, especially one who was clearly from a wealthy household. She could not afford to slight her. You will stay in this room. Wang Guifan grabbed Han Lin and shoved him toward a cramped side chamber. She then gestured to Han Lin's original bedroom for Nalan Yinran. The room is modest. Miss, please do not take offense. I shall fetch fresh bedding at once. Nalan Yinran glanced inside the room. Earthen walls, packed mud floors, a single wooden bed, and a rickety table missing one leg. Her lips twitched almost imperceptibly. Thank you, auntie. It is no trouble at all. Han Lin peeked into the side chamber. He nearly groaned out loud. This was barely a room. It was nothing more than a storage shed. It was scarcely larger than a bed. Hose and broken bamboo baskets were stacked in the corners, and the ground was bare compacted mud without a single stone slab. His old bedroom, though shabby, had at least been a proper sleeping chamber. This space had always been used to store farm tools. Mother, I'm to sleep here? Wang Guifan was already busy making the bed for Nalan Yinran and did not look back. Where else would you sleep? The young lady has traveled far to visit us. How could you make her stay in the side shed? Han Lin opened his mouth to argue, then thought better of it. 120 taels. He repeated the number silently to himself. For 120 taels of silver, for the betrothal gift to Chuyer, and for the system reward, sleeping in a storage shed was nothing. He would even sleep in the pigsty if needed. Of course, he would not tell his parents the full sum. That matter could wait. Inside Han Lin's former bedroom, Nailin Yinran watched Wang Guifan bustling about arranging bedding, her brows faintly furrowed. It was far too shabby. This was the finest room in the entire house, yet still dilapidated enough to stir pity. Layers of dust clung to the ceiling beams, and cobwebs draped the corners. Wang Guifan swept one away with a broom, only for a tiny spider to crawl out and spin silk again moments later. The wooden window did not close tightly, creaking whenever the wind stirred. Several cracks snaked across the earthen walls, the widest broad enough to fit a finger. Still, Nailin Yinran walked to the window and pushed open the squeaky wooden shutters to gaze outward. Beneath the moonlight, the village lay quietly nestled at the foot of the hills. Beyond stretched rolling mountain silhouettes, dark and towering like slumbering beasts. The more remote, the better. The poorer, the safer. Her pursuers would never think to look for her in a place like this. A faint smile curved her lips. She had made a clever choice. Meanwhile, Han Tai stood at the door of the side shed, watching Han Lin with a stern expression. Come here. Han Lin had just shifted hose aside to clear space for a bed. Hearing his father's call, his heart sank. The interrogation was coming. He followed Han Tai into the main hall and found Wang Guifan already waiting there. The two sat side by side, their expressions equally grave. Speak plainly, Han Tai said gruffly. What is the truth about that young lady? She's merely a friend. Do not try to fool me. Han Tai rarely cut him off. This honest farmer was usually slow to speak, yet this situation was far too strange. A girl dressed in silk traveling all the way to their impoverished village to lodge in their home? No explanation made sense. That fabric she wears, I saw it in town, dozens of one afoot. The hairpin in her hair would feed our whole family for a year. And you claim she is your friend? When did you make such an acquaintance? Han Lin scratched his head. Very well. There was no great harm in telling them part of the truth. Father, mother, this is what happened. I met her in town today. Men were chasing her. And, well, she can run faster than me. Han Tai and Wang Guifan traded confused glances. What sort of rambling story was this? Later she tracked me back to the village and said she needed somewhere to stay. She offered to pay silver. Han Lin spread his hands. That is all there is to it. Wang Guifan caught the critical phrase immediately. Pay silver? How much? Han Lin hesitated for a heartbeat. His mind raced. Then he held out an open palm with a straight face. 50 taels. 50 taels. Wang Guifan shot to her feet, her voice trembling. Han Tai's hands shook, nearly knocking over the bowl beside him. 50 taels of silver. Even if Han Tai chopped firewood every single day of the year, he would earn no more than 7 or 8 taels. 50 taels would let their family live comfortably for years. Han Lin nodded. She will pay the silver up front before staying. Where is the money? Han Tai's gaze sharpened as he stretched out a rough palm. Han Lin had prepared in advance. He pulled a heavy cloth pouch from his robes and set it respectfully on the table. It is all here. Han Tai untied the pouch and poured the silver fragments onto the table. The silver glinted pale white beneath the oil lamp. He counted the pieces twice, confirming there were indeed 50 taels. He stuffed the silver back into the pouch and looked up at Han Lin. Han Lin met his gaze with an utterly sincere, open expression. Han Tai said nothing, merely staring at him. Wang Guifan watched him as well. The same unspoken question lingered in both their eyes. Why was the boy being so honest today? In the past, he would spin 7 or 8 elaborate lies just to hide 2 taels of stolen silver. Now he handed over 50 taels without a fuss? Is every coin here? Wang Guifan asked suspiciously. Every last tael. Han Lin thumped his chest. Father, mother, you know me. Am I the kind of person who keeps secret savings? Han Tai did not answer. He continued to study his son for a long moment, then silently tucked the pouch inside his clothing. The gesture made one thing clear. Whatever the truth might be, these 50 taels were his now. Han Lin breathed a quiet sigh of relief once his father had secured the silver. He still held 70 taels hidden in his own robes. He would never reveal that number to anyone. With these 50 taels given to his parents, plus the 70 he kept for himself, he had more than enough silver for Chuyer's betrothal gift. There would even be a comfortable surplus. The 50 taels could count as a gift to his parents, and it would also keep them from prying further. No matter how one calculated it, he had come out ahead. Han Lin lay on the wooden bed in the side shed, hands tucked beneath his head, grinning widely. 120 taels. 50 taels handed over to his parents, 70 taels left for himself. 70 taels was more than enough to wed Chwayer. He rolled onto his side, pulled the silver sack out, and counted the pieces again. Pale, heavy silver. He lifted it to his nose and inhaled. There was nothing quite like the scent of silver. It was wonderful. With this money, 50 taels would cover the betrothal gift. The remaining 20 could fund repairs to the house and buy new clothes. When he showed up at Chwayer's door dressed in new robes with silver in hand, the girl would be utterly stunned. Han Lin grew more elated the more he imagined it, unable to hold back quiet laughter. As for why Nalin Yinran had sought refuge in this remote mountain village, he did not intend to dig deeper. It did not take much thought to guess she was hiding from someone. Fine clothing, incredible speed, and a sudden wish to hide in this forgotten hamlet. She was clearly fleeing trouble. But that was none of his concern. Fortune came with risk, and 120 taels made the risk worthwhile. Besides, the young woman could not stay forever. Han Lin stowed the silver back inside his robes, rolled over, and closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would go to see Chwayer. He would let her witness what true prosperity looked like in the neighboring bedroom. Nalin Yinran sat cross-legged on the wooden bed, palms upturned resting on her knees, her eyes shut. Her breathing was slow and steady, each inhalation drawn out, each exhalation barely audible. If someone stood watching, they would witness an extraordinary sight. In the darkness, countless silvery specks drifted toward her like fireflies on a summer night. They swirled slowly around her before merging into her body one by one. The specks were sparse and drifted sluggishly, as if diluted by some invisible force. Nalin Yinran's frown deepened. After roughly the time it took to burn one incense stick, she opened her eyes abruptly. "What a dreadful place," she muttered, her tone filled with exasperation. The spiritual energy in this village was shockingly thin. In the city, one double hour of cultivation yielded a result she could barely match by cultivating most of the day here. With spiritual energy this thin, breaking through to the next realm was out of the question. It would be an achievement just to keep her cultivation base from waning. Nalin Yinran sighed and pulled an object from her waist pouch. It was a thumb-sized blue crystal, clear and translucent. Something seemed to drift slowly within it, radiating a faint blue luminescence. A spirit stone. They were not rare in the cultivation world, yet far from cheap. A single stone like this could sustain an ordinary mortal family with food and clothing for years. Nalin Yinran closed her eyes again, clutching the spirit stone in her palm. This time she stopped drawing on the sparse spiritual energy in the air and channeled spiritual power straight from the crystal. The blue crystal dimmed little by little, and the tension on her features finally eased. Very well. She would stay for a while first. If things grew too unbearable, she would simply leave. Early the next morning, Han Tai rose at dawn and headed for Butcher Zhang's home at the village entrance with silver tucked in his robes. Butcher Zhang was trimming meat from bones behind his chopping block. He glanced up only briefly as Han Tai walked over. "Old Han, how much meat do you want today?" Han Tai stood before the counter, holding himself a little straighter than usual. 2 caddies of streaky pork. The cleaver in Butcher Zhang's hand paused. He lifted his head and eyed Han Tai in surprise. 2 caddies? Is there a celebration in your household? Han Tai said nothing more. He paid with a grin and carried the meat away. Butcher Zhang watched his retreating figure, shook his head, and returned to carving bones. Inside the kitchen, Wang Guifan bustled busily. Rice porridge bubbled steadily in an iron pot over the stove, white grains swirling in the broth. In a smaller pot beside it, meat sizzled as it fried, and rich cooking oil fragrance drifted all across the courtyard. Han Tai squatted beside the stove feeding firewood. Smoke stung his eyes, yet he could not wipe the smile from his face. Han Lin was jolted awake by the aroma of meat. He blinked groggily, his nostrils twitching involuntarily. This was not the familiar tangy pickled vegetable scent. It was meat. He sprang from his bed with a sharp twist, shoved open the side chamber door, and rushed into the main hall. White porridge and several side dishes sat on the table. Centered upon it was a large plate of glistening stir-fried meat. Han Lin's eyes widened. White rice and stir-fried meat. Ever since he arrived in this world, every meal had consisted of scratchy millet porridge and overly salty pickled vegetable strips. What occasion warranted such a feast today? Wow, this is something special. Han Lin plopped down at the table and reached for his chopsticks. Are we celebrating New Year early? Before his fingers touched the chopsticks, a firm smack landed squarely on the back of his head. Wang Guifan walked out from the kitchen carrying another bowl, her expression stern. Slow down. The young lady hasn't come out yet, and you're already ready to dig in. Han Lin rubbed the back of his head and stared at his mother aggrievedly. I'm starving. Starving or not, you wait. Wang Guifan set the bowl down and shot him a sharp look. We received so much money from her. Can't you observe basic manners? Han Lin opened his mouth to argue that the silver had not been given freely, but one glance at his mother's expression convinced him to hold his tongue. He set down his chopsticks and sat properly, though his gaze kept drifting toward the plate of meat. Han Tai took a seat at the table as well. Watching his son's greedy stare, he refrained from scolding him for once, merely shaking his head with a faint smile. Han Lin stared at the meat for a long moment before abruptly standing. I'll go get her. He walked to the door of the room that had once belonged to him and knocked. Miss Nayland, breakfast is ready. Silence lingered inside for several heartbeats. Then a quiet voice drifted out. I hear you. Han Lin waited outside, but heard no movement. He raised his hand to knock again when the door swung open. Nayland Yinran stood in the doorway, her hair loosely tied back. Her expression remained as calm as ever. She glanced at Han Lin without a word, stepping past him toward the main hall. Han Lin followed. He caught a faint, delicate scent clinging to her, unlike the soapgrass aroma worn by village girls. The two sat down at the table, and only then did Han Tai and Wang Guifan pick up their chopsticks. Please make yourself at home, young lady. Simple fare, help yourself. Wang Guifan smiled and filled a bowl with porridge for Nayland Yinran. Nayland Yinran accepted the bowl and nodded slightly. Thank you, Aunt. Han Lin cared nothing for formalities. His chopsticks darted forward instantly, lifting a chunk of meat into his mouth. Delicious. Utterly delicious. It paled in comparison to the braised pork he remembered from his past life. Yet in this village, it was the finest meal imaginable. He ate ravenously, finishing one bowl of porridge in 2 gulps. His chopsticks flicked rapidly between the meat plate and his bowl. Han Tai cleared his throat sharply. Han Lin paid no heed. Wang Guifan kicked him beneath the table. Han Lin looked up, cheeks stuffed full of meat. What? Han Tai shot a subtle glance toward Nayland Yinran. The message was plain, mind your table manners in front of their guest. Han Lin glanced sideways at Nayland Yinran. She sipped porridge slowly and gracefully, every movement gentle. It was a stark contrast to his own ravenous display. Han Lin looked sheepish, set down his chopsticks, and ate his porridge politely. Still, he secretly slipped another piece of meat onto his bowl. Han Lin scraped the last of the porridge from his bowl and patted his stomach contentedly. This single breakfast was richer than all the meals he had eaten since arriving in this world combined. Nayland Yinran had long since set aside her chopsticks. She rose and returned to her room, closing the door behind her. Han Lin glanced toward the shut door without much thought. She had paid for lodging. She could do as she pleased. He had no wish to meddle. His mind was fixed firmly on one person, Chuyer. The silver was in hand. There was no reason to delay. This matter required urgency, utmost urgency. Before leaving the courtyard, he spoke out of habit in his mind. System, is there a shop? Silence. System? Exchange shop? Lucky draw wheel. Anything, just give me a sign. Still silence. Han Lin rolled his eyes. Your functions are far too limited. Every system in novels has a shop. Did you drop out of system school? Not even a single ding came in response. Han Lin sighed and abandoned the thought. So be it, if there was no shop. The core function still remained, form a family and receive rewards. That was enough. He straightened his robes, stepped out of the courtyard, and headed straight for the eastern end of the village. His steps were light, and he hummed an untuned tune, his mood buoyant. Chuyer was not beneath the old locust tree at the eastern end. Han Lin did not grow anxious. He wandered the vicinity and finally spotted her beside the village well. Chuyer bent to draw water. The bucket hung deep in the well. She hauled the rope upward inch by inch, her sleeves rolled to her elbows, revealing pale forearms. Han Lin walked over with a grin. Chuyer heard his footsteps and lifted her head. Upon seeing Han Lin, her brows instantly knitted. She set down the rope and planted her hands on her hips. Why have you come again? Han Lin halted before her, hands clasped behind his back, smiling silently. Chuyer grew uncomfortable under his stare and frowned harder. What do you want? I made myself clear last time. 50 taels of bride price. If you cannot pay it, do not loiter here and hold me up while I fetch water. Han Lin cleared his throat. You said 50 taels of bride price, and you would marry me if I could provide it, correct? Chuyer stared at him, then looked him up and down with mocking amusement. Oh, you have 50 taels. She let out a scoff. Everyone in the village knows how poor your family is. You don't even have intact walls in your home. Do you expect me to believe you own 50 taels? Han Lin did not lose his temper. He folded his arms, his expression earnest. I truly have 50 taels. Chuyer's laughter died away. She studied Han Lin for several seconds and realized he showed no trace of jest. Her brows drew tight. Abandoning the bucket, She draped the rope over the well edge and hurried back inside the house. Han Lin stood there, thoroughly confused. Hey, where are you going? He scratched his head, unable to make sense of her reaction. Was that acceptance or refusal? Why run off? He lingered beside the well, debating whether to follow and knock on the door, when the house door opened once more. Chui'er emerged, dragging another person behind her, her mother, Zhang Zuohua. Zhang Zuohua was a plump middle-aged woman in her 40s with a round face and sharp eyes, plainly a shrewd character. Her daughter pulled her into the courtyard, and she swept Han Lin up and down with a gaze as if appraising livestock up for sale. Well now, isn't that Wang Guifen's boy? Zhang Zuohua tilted her chin upward, her tone cool. My Chui'er tells me you wish to wed her. Han Lin stood straight at once, plastering a smile on his face. This was his future mother-in-law. He needed to maintain a respectful attitude. Greetings, aunt. That's right. I hope to marry Chui'er. Zhang Zuohua strolled slowly toward him, arms crossed. You understand the terms, do you not? 50 taels of silver for bride price. I understand completely. Han Lin slapped his chest confidently. 50 taels. No problem. Zhang Zuohua narrowed her eyes, undisguised doubt in her gaze. Can your family afford 50 taels? Han Lin knew he needed to make his story convincing. He spoke calmly and firmly. As you may not know, my maternal uncle returned recently. He made his fortune traveling as a merchant and visited my parents. He left our household a sum of silver. We can come up with 50 taels. Zhang Zuohua raised an eyebrow. She was unsure whether Han Lin even had an uncle. Yet the boy spoke with such conviction he hardly seemed to lie. More importantly, as long as the silver was genuine, everything else mattered little. Her tale about the village chief offering 60 taels had only been bluff. The chief's stout son had indeed sent matchmakers, but he had only offered 30 taels. She had rejected it outright. 30 taels was nowhere near enough for her daughter. If this young man could pay 50 taels, a marriage was not out of the question. A daughter must marry someone eventually. Very well. Zhang Zuohua nodded decisively. Since you are sincere, send your parents to negotiate. Matters of bride price ought to be settled between the two families' elders. It is inappropriate for a boy to run back and forth alone. She tugged Chui'er and turned to walk inside. Chui'er glanced back at Han Lin, her expression complex, a mix of shyness and reluctance. Zhang Zuohua tossed a remark over her shoulder without turning. Remember, send your parents. The door slammed shut. Han Lin stood in the courtyard, the smile on his face growing wider and wider. There was hope. Definitely hope. He spun around and raced away, his feet flying as if shod with wind, eager to rush home and share the good news with his parents. Zhang Zuohua's words made it clear she had softened her stance. 50 taels, and his parents needed to come negotiate. The marriage was already half settled. As he ran, Han Lin pondered silently. His parents would agree. He had given them the 50 taels the day before. He had invented a story about the silver's origin, yet the money itself was real. Nalin Yinran had given him 120 taels. He had secretly kept 70 for himself. As long as he kept quiet about that detail, no one would know the truth. Once Chui'er became his wife, he could pursue the goals laid out by the system openly. When he earned the system's rewards, cultivation and immortality would be within reach. Han Lin's thoughts grew brighter by the second. He sprinted faster, nearly tripping at the village entrance. He regained his balance and continued racing home. He pushed open the courtyard gate. Han Tai squatted sharpening a hoe while Wang Guifan fed chickens nearby. Both stared, seeing him gasping for breath. Were you chased by a dog? Han Tai asked. Han Lin leaned against his knees to catch his breath, then lifted his flushed face. Father, mother, get ready. We are going to Chui'er's home to propose marriage. Han Tai's hoe clanged to the ground. Propose marriage? Wang Guifan set her chicken feed basin down and stood, staring blankly at her son. What proposal? What are you talking about? Han Lin recovered his breath, wiped sweat from his forehead, and recounted everything that had happened at Chui'er's home, speaking animatedly. When he finished, Han Tai and Wang Guifan fell silent. They exchanged a look, their expressions grim. 50 taels. Wang Guifan spoke first, her voice shaking. Does she think her daughter is made of gold or silver, demanding 50 taels? Han Tai added gruffly beside her. As if we are wealthy landowners. Exactly. Wang Guifan grew more upset. 50 taels, she might as well rob us. In this village, 8 or 10 taels is the maximum for a bride price. Zhang Zuohua is shamelessly overcharging. Han Lin grew anxious. Mother, Chui'er is worth it. Worth what? Wang Guifan glared at him. Look at second daughter Li from the eastern village. Her family only asks 5 taels. She has strong arms and legs, clearly capable of hard work. And Chunny, Butcher Zhang's daughter from the west village. She may be dark-skinned, but her father is a butcher and will provide ample dowry. Han Lin's mouth twitched. Second daughter Li's arms are thicker than my thighs. Chunni's skin is as dark as charcoal. Am I marrying a wife or a draft animal? You know nothing. Han Tai slapped his thigh. Strong arms mean she can work the fields. Look at your frail frame. A hard-working wife could share half your farm labor and spare you endless toil. Han Lin wanted to retort that he would become a cultivator in the future and never tend farmland again. Yet he dared not utter such words aloud. He stiffened his neck and resorted to his final tactic, stubborn defiance. I don't care. I only want Chuyer. I will marry no other woman. If you forbid this, I shall remain a bachelor all my life. You, Han Tai glared angrily. I have set my heart on Chuyer. Han Lin folded his arms, unyielding. The decision rests with you. Han Tai and Wang Guifan exchanged another glance. Both saw helplessness in each other's eyes. After a quiet pause, Wang Guifan sighed and tugged Han Tai's sleeve. Let us talk inside. The couple entered their room and shut the door. Han Lin stood in the courtyard, straining to listen. He could only hear muffled murmurs, unable to distinguish individual words. Inside the chamber, Wang Guifan sat on the bed, her face torn between distress and reluctance. 50 taels of silver, barely in their possession, would soon be handed over. Husband, about this matter, Han Tai squatted on the ground, quiet, twisting a dry tobacco pipe between his fingers and taking slow puffs. After a long while, he spoke in a low rumble. This boy is a reckless spendthrift. Wang Guifan fell silent briefly before sighing softly. Let it be. Han Tai lifted his head to look at her. You know what he was like before. Wandering the town every day, idle and lazy, barely willing to greet me or call me mother. After being struck by that wild boar, he's changed. He greets people properly, no longer steals silver, and now he is determined to wed. Is this not far better than before? Han Tai said nothing, continuing to smoke. Chuyer is a fine-looking girl, among the prettiest in our village. 50 taels is steep, yet our son wants her. We should indulge him. Han Tai finished his tobacco, tapping ashes from the pipe against the floor. Very well. He stood, resignation etched across his face. We shall pretend we never received those 50 taels. In the adjacent room, Nailin Yinran sat cross-legged on the bed with her eyes closed. Yet the corners of her mouth tilted downward faintly. She had heard every word of their argument outside. As a chi-refining cultivator, her hearing far surpassed ordinary mortals. Not a single word of their noisy dispute escaped her notice. Truly, men are all alike. She muttered quietly. No sooner had he received silver than he hurried off to seek a wife. A man ruled by desire. Still, she had no intention of interfering. Once she had given away the 120 taels, she had never planned to claim it back. The boy could spend the silver however he pleased. It was none of her concern. Nailin Yinran closed her eyes once more and resumed drawing spiritual power from the spirit stone. Blue light swirled gently within the crystal resting in her palm, wrapping her in a faint, glowing halo. At last, the main hall door opened. Han Tai and Wang Guifan stepped outside. Their faces showed neither joy nor anger, only weary acceptance. Han Lin saw their expressions and instantly knew where he stood. Father, mother, you agree? Han Tai shot him a glance and let out a dull ahem. Han Lin nearly jumped for joy. But Wang Guifan held up one finger, her face solemn. 50 taels will go toward your bride price, and then we'll have no money left for the wedding feast. You'll need to come up with the banquet funds yourself. Don't ask us for a single coin. Han Lin rolled his eyes and thought quickly. He reached inside his tunic, fumbled around for a moment, and pulled out a silver ingot. 10 taels. Han Tai's eyes went wide on the spot. Wang Guifan stared at the silver, her expression darkening visibly. Where did you get this money? Han Tai demanded, his tone sharp as if interrogating a criminal. I thought you said every last tael was handed over yesterday. Han Lin stepped back and forced an awkward laugh. Well, actually, they didn't give me 50 taels in total. How much was it then? 60 taels. Han Tai advanced one step forward, his gaze sharp as a blade. You rascal, you lied to us yesterday. 60 taels? It wouldn't surprise me if it was 600. Absolutely not. Han Lin waved both hands frantically, acting as if someone had stepped on his tail. Father, it's truly only 60 taels. I'd originally planned to use these 10 taels to head into town to wander about, but for Chuyer's sake, I've decided I won't go anymore. He spoke with the most sincere look and earnest tone he could muster. Han Lin stared at him for a long while, then glanced toward Wang Guifan. Wang Guifan rolled her eyes and snatched the 10-tael silver ingot straight out of Han Lin's hand. Very well. This 10 taels will barely cover 2 tables for the feast. I'll keep the rest safe for you, so you don't squander it again. Han Lin opened his mouth to protest, but met his mother's stern stare and wisely clamped his lips shut. Oh well, he'd treat these 10 taels as the feast budget. After all, he still had another 60 taels hidden away, more than enough. Han Tai turned the silver ingot over and over in his hands, even biting it to confirm it was genuine. 77. He passed the silver to Wang Guifan, then turned toward the courtyard gate. Let's go. Han Lin blinked in confusion. Where are we going? Han Tai did not look back. Where else? We're going to Chuayer's home to formally propose marriage. Wang Guifan tucked the silver into her clothing, smoothed her lapels, and followed Han Tai. Han Lin finally caught on and hurried along behind them, unable to wipe the grin off his face. The three filed out of the courtyard and headed toward the eastern end of the village. Han Tai walked at the front. His pace was unhurried, yet every step was firm. Wang Guifan strode beside him, throwing periodic glares over her shoulder at Han Lin, telling him not to look so ridiculously pleased. Han Lin toned down his expression obediently, yet the excitement shining in his eyes could not be concealed. They were going to propose. He, Han Lin, was going to propose marriage today. Han Lin hurried along behind his parents, walking so quickly he nearly trod on Han Tai's heels several times. Han Tai turned to glare at him. Han Lin chuckled and stepped back half a pace, only to close the gap again soon after. When they reached Chuayer's doorway, Zhang Cuihua sat in the yard shelling corn. She lifted her head, spotted Han Tai and Wang Guifan, and her face lit up. She tossed the corn into a basket, brushed debris off her palms, and hurried forward with a warm smile. Why, Brother Han, sister-in-law? Come right in. She then called toward the house. Chuayer, come out here a moment. Chuayer poked her head out of the doorway. When she saw Han Lin standing in the yard, she ducked back inside at once. Zhang Cuihua smiled, patted her daughter's arm, whispered something into her ear, and gently pushed her toward Han Lin. Go on, talk with Han Lin outside. The elders have important matters to discuss. Don't linger here. Chuayer stumbled forward from the shove. She kept her head lowered, the tips of her ears flushed pink. Han Lin smiled at her and tilted his head toward the old locust tree. The two walked over beneath its canopy, one after the other. Cool shades stretched beneath the branches, carpeted with fallen locust blossoms that felt soft underfoot. Chuayer stood beneath the tree, twisting her hands together and saying nothing. A far cry from the bold young woman he'd seen cracking sunflower seeds last time. Han Lin leaned against the trunk and watched her, amused. You're blushing? Chuayer lifted her head to shoot him a glare, but quickly dropped her gaze again, her voice faint as a mosquito's buzz. Are you truly going to marry me? Han Lin nodded without hesitation. Of course I am. Chuayer looked up once more, this time keeping her head raised, her expression earnest. And you, are you willing? Han Lin paused, then laughed. Naturally I'm willing. Why else would I come to propose? Chuayer bit her lower lip and stole a glance at him. I am willing too. You're not bad looking. A smile tugged at Han Lin's lips, but he said nothing. But, Chuayer lowered her head once more, her voice growing quieter. I've heard your family was once extremely poor, often without enough to eat. If I marry you, will I go hungry? Han Lin's smile froze for an instant. He quickly sifted through the original owner's memories and realized Chuayer's words were completely true. The former Han Lin's family often struggled to fill their bellies. At their lowest, they only had one thin, watery meal a day. Han Lin cleared his throat and let out a hearty laugh. You have nothing to worry about. Those days are long gone. Our family has money now, and we'll eat steamed white rice every day from now on. Chuayer's eyes lit up, bright as stars. Truly, truly, you won't lie to me? If I lie to you, I'm a dog. Chuayer burst into giggles and quickly covered her mouth, yet her eyes crinkled into bright crescent moons, betraying her joy. Once she stopped laughing, she turned serious again, meeting Han Lin's eyes to ask a question he had not anticipated at all. Will you ever strike me? Han Lin stared at her, utterly astonished. Strike you? Whatever for? Chuayer hung her head, her tone subdued. I've heard married women in the village talk. Many husbands beat their wives, when drunk, when things go wrong, sometimes for no reason at all. My father drove my mother away with beatings long ago. Her voice remained calm, yet her knuckles whitened as she clutched the hem of her tunic. Han Lin's heart twinged with sympathy as he watched her. He reached out and grasped both of Chuayer's hands. Chuayer gave a start and tried to pull away instinctively, but Han Lin held fast. She struggled a little without success. Let me go. Chuayer. Han Lin looked straight at her, her expression more serious than it had ever been. I will never lay a hand on you. Not for as long as I live. Chuayer froze and stopped struggling. She lifted her face to look at him, and color flooded her cheeks, spreading from her ears all the way down her neck. Then she lowered her head again. This time it was not out of shyness. She was smiling. You must keep your word. I swear I will. Han Lin held her hands, his heart brimming with delight. Chuayer's palms were rough from years of labor, yet soft and warm. Back in his modern life, he had never even dated a girl. He had never once held a woman's hand. Who would have thought that after transmigrating to this world, he would experience this first? The two stood beneath the old locust tree, neither speaking, neither letting go. After some time, the house door creaked open. Han Tai and Wang Guifan stepped out, followed by Zhang Cuihua. All three wore amiable expressions, clearly having reached a satisfactory agreement. Han Tai glanced toward the locust tree and spotted his son holding the young woman's hands. His mouth twitched, yet he said nothing. 140. Wang Guifan smiled knowingly. Linner, it's time to leave. Han Lin acknowledged her, released Chuayer's hands, and stepped back 2 paces. I'll take my leave now. Chuayer nodded, staying rooted under the tree. Han Lin followed his parents toward the courtyard gate and glanced back as he reached it. Chuayer still stood beneath the locust tree. When she caught him looking, she hastily diverted her gaze, pretending to watch birds perched on the branches. Han Lin chuckled and strode forward to catch up with his parents. Zhang Cuihua walked over to Chuayer and looked in the direction Han Lin's group had departed. What are you staring at? They're already far away. Chuayer lowered her head, her cheeks flushed. Zhang Cuihua shook her head at her daughter's love-struck appearance and tugged her toward the house. Come inside, we can talk there. Back home, Han Tai and Wang Guifan stood in the main hall, exchanged a glance, and immediately began rummaging through cupboards and chests. We need to buy 2 new quilts for the wedding. The coverlets can't look shabby. We'll need red paper to paste on the windows. We have to stock up on rice, flour, oil, and salt for the feast. They listed everything they needed back and forth, and soon realized there were far too many items to count on one hand. They fetched a charcoal stick and jotted the list onto a wooden board. Han Tai set the charcoal stick down and stood up. It's easier to head straight into town and buy everything from the list, so we don't forget anything. Wang Guifan nodded. They walked to the doorway and looked back at Han Lin. We're going into town to purchase supplies. Watch the house while we're gone. Han Tai pointed toward the closed door of the adjacent side room and lowered his voice. We still have a guest staying there. Don't let her think we're treating her poorly. Han Lin readily agreed. No problem. I'll keep an eye on things. The rumble of their ox cart faded into the distance. Silence settled over the yard, broken only by old hens scratching for insects in the corner and clucking softly. Han Lin dragged a small wooden stool to the entrance of the main hall, sat down with one leg crossed over the other to soak up the sunshine, humming a nameless tune under his breath. He glanced toward the tightly shut door next door. Nailin Yinran had not emerged since breakfast, and he wondered what she was doing cooped up inside. Han Lin did not dwell on it much. In his eyes, Nailin Yinran was just a young noble lady hiding out at their home for some unknown reason. As for the possibility of her being a cultivator, that thought had yet to cross his mind. Han Lin sat in the sunlight for a while, imagining the happy life he would lead after marrying. Wed Chuayer, build a warm home together, then raise plenty of children, and earn endless rewards from his system. His cultivation would soar. One day he would ride the clouds, seek immortality, and reach the pinnacle of life. The more he pictured it, the broader his grin grew. Then his smile froze abruptly. Wait. A critical problem crashed into his mind, making his head buzz. A bridal chamber. He had given his own room to Nailin Yinran, and now he slept in a cramped storage side chamber. Where would he and Chuayer live after the wedding? They could not possibly squeeze into that tiny dilapidated side room. There was barely space for one bed, let alone 2 people. There would be no room to move. And he could not drive Nailin Yinran away. She had given him 120 taels of silver. It would be dishonorable to turn her out before she had stayed a full month. Han Lin stood and paced back and forth across the courtyard. He surveyed the ramshackle family home, growing increasingly worried. The main hall was for eating, unfit for lodging. His parents' room could not be disturbed. The side hut was only storage space. The only decent room was occupied by Nailin Yinran. He patted the silver tucked in his robes and gritted his teeth. He would expand the house. There was no other choice. Not only was there insufficient space, these drafty earthen walls would surely sadden Chuayer when she moved in as a bride, even if she said nothing. No young woman wanted to marry into such a run-down dwelling. Once he made up his mind, he acted at once. Han Lin strode out the courtyard gate, heading straight for Han Erga's home. Han Erga's father, Han Laosan, was the village carpenter and mason. He could build walls, install roof beams, and mend rooftops, skilled in every sort of construction work. Villagers always sought him out when they needed pigsties built or cooking hearths laid. Han Lin arrived to find Han Laosen squatting in his yard sharpening an axe, with Han Ergu handing him tools. "Uncle San," Han Lin called as he stepped into the yard. Han Laosen lifted his head. Seeing Han Lin, he did not pause his work. "Han Lin, what brings you here?" "Uncle San, I'd like to hire you to expand our house and repair the old walls as well." Han Laosen's sharpening motion halted. He looked up at Han Lin, clearly surprised. Han Ergu gaped openly beside him. "Expand your house? Your family?" Han Ergu stood up and looked Han Lin up and down. "Where will you get the money for that?" Han Lin folded his hands behind his back, tilted his chin upward, wearing an air of modest pride. "My maternal uncle recently struck fortune and offered me some support." Han Ergu's lips twitched. "Since when do you have a maternal uncle?" "He's always been there. We just haven't kept in close touch." Han Lin smoothly changed the subject. "Let's get down to business. Will you take the job? I need it finished quickly." Han Laosen set down his axe, rose to his feet, and wiped his hands on his apron. "What layout do you want? How large an extension?" Han Lin gestured with his hands. "Build an extra chamber attached to the main house. It doesn't need to be huge, just enough for a bed and a wardrobe. Also patch up all the crumbling walls, block up every drafty crack, and inspect the roof thoroughly. I'm getting married soon, and this house simply won't do." Han Laosen nodded and mentally tallied the cost of materials and labor. "Between materials and wages, it will cost at least 15 taels of silver. I'll give you 20 taels." Han Lin pulled a silver ingot from his tunic and pressed it into Han Laosen's palm. "Uncle San, use good quality materials and do solid work, don't cut corners." Han Laosen stared at the silver, then glanced at Han Lin. He fell silent for a second before nodding. "Very well. Work will start tomorrow morning." Han Ergu could hold back his curiosity no longer and grabbed Han Lin's arm. "Wait a minute. You just said you're getting married? To who?" Han Lin turned toward him with a faint smile playing on his mouth. "Chuyer. Chuyer." Han Ergu's voice shot up an octave, his face a picture of disbelief. "Zhang Tsuihua's Chuyer from the eastern end of the village? Who else? Is there another Chuyer in our village?" Han Ergu stood dumbfounded. He stared at Han Lin for several long seconds, then shook his head firmly. "I don't believe it. I heard Chuyer's family demands 50 taels as bride price. Where could your family get that kind of money? And not long ago you used to run away whenever you saw her. Don't you remember her mother chasing you with a carrying pole? That was then, this is now." Han Lin patted Han Ergu's shoulder and spoke solemnly. "People change, after all." Han Ergu rolled his eyes at his pompous tone. "Smooth talker." Han Lin paid him no mind, his smile growing more self-satisfied. Han Ergu fell quiet for a moment, then leaned closer and lowered his voice. "Say, once you're married, will you still head into town to look at young women?" Han Lin waved his hand dismissively. "Why would I? I'll have a wife of my own. I won't need to wander around looking for others." Han Ergu's lips trembled slightly. He glanced at Han Laosen tidying tools nearby, then looked at his own crumbling courtyard wall and let out a deep sigh. "Father." Han Laosen did not look up. "What is it? Maybe I ought to find a wife too." Han Laosen finally raised his head, cast a glance at his son, and returned to packing his equipment. "First earn enough for the bride price." Han Ergu's face fell instantly. Han Lin laughed as he watched the exchange, clapped Han Ergu on the shoulder, and headed home. 20 taels spent. He still had 40 taels left on his person. Han Lin calculated as he walked. 20 taels for construction work. His parents were handling wedding feast arrangements, so he did not need to worry about that. The remaining 40 taels would sustain their daily living expenses. They would not be wealthy, but at least they would no longer survive on coarse millet and pickles every meal. He reached his courtyard gate and halted suddenly. Nailin Yinran sat on the threshold. She rested her chin in her hands, legs stretched out and crossed. Sunlight fell across her face, her skin so pale it seemed to glow. This was the first time Han Lin had seen her step out of her room voluntarily. "Why, Miss Nailin, out to enjoy the sunshine?" Han Lin walked over with a grin. Nailin Yinran lifted her head and regarded him with an amused, half-smirking look. Her expression was strange. Han Lin could not tell if she was mocking him or merely entertained, yet it made him feel faintly uneasy. "You're going to take a wife?" Han Lin blinked. How had she heard about this? Then he realized he had been speaking loudly to his parents in the yard earlier. Anyone within earshot would have caught every word. He. Han Lin scratched the back of his neck, smiling sheepishly. "You heard all that." Nailin Yinran offered no reply, merely continued watching him with that amused glint, the corners of her mouth tilted upward. "You're quite resourceful, using my silver to fund your marriage." Han Lin's smile froze on his face. Nailin Yinran sat on the threshold, tilting her head to look at him. The faint, knowing curve of her mouth made him thoroughly ill at ease. He had no way to respond. He certainly could not say, "That's right, I'm using your money to marry a wife, so what?" He opted for tactical silence, letting out a nervous chuckle without uttering a single word. Fortunately, Nalan Yinran did not press the matter further. She stood up and brushed dust off her skirt. Her gaze drifted past Han Lin toward the rolling mountains behind him. "Is there any scenic, picturesque spot near your village?" Han Lin blinked in surprise. "Huh, picturesque scenery? Why did this young lady suddenly want to see the sights?" "I'm asking you." Nalan Yinran frowned at his daze, impatience clear in her tone. "Just tell me yes or no and lead the way. Stop rambling." Han Lin jolted and nodded hastily. "Yes, yes. There's a lake behind the village. It's absolutely beautiful. You won't be disappointed." Nalan Yinran tilted her chin upward. "Show me the way." The two left the courtyard and followed a narrow trail leading into the mountains behind the village. The path was flanked by waist-high wild grass. Occasionally, a grasshopper hopped out and bounced across Han Lin's feet, startling him. Nalan Yinran followed behind, stepping lightly. Even on the uneven dirt road, she maintained perfect balance, never swaying. They walked for roughly half an incense stick's time, passing through a sparse pine grove, and the view suddenly opened up before them. A lake rested quietly in the valley. It was not large, yet its water was crystal clear, revealing smooth pebbles and small fish swimming along the lake bed. Lush green meadows stretched all around the shore, extending to the foot of the mountains. Several gnarled old willow trees hung their branches low. Their shadows rippled gently across the water in the breeze. Layer upon layer of mountains rose in the distance, their peaks half shrouded by mist, like pale blue ink washes brushed along the horizon. Nalan Yinran stood by the lake, closed her eyes, and drew a deep breath. She remained silent for several seconds, then gave a slight nod. "Indeed, it's lovely." With that, she sat down directly on the grass, crossed her legs, rested her hands on her knees, and shut her eyes again. Seeing her settle in, Han Lin walked over and sat an arm's length away. He had no idea what she was doing. This young lady certainly had a strange temperament, traveling all this way just to sit with her eyes closed. Still, it was no concern of his. He would have been idle at home anyway. A cool wind swept off the lake, carrying the faint scent of aquatic plants. It felt pleasant against his skin. After sitting for a while, boredom crept over Han Lin, and his gaze drifted involuntarily toward Nalan Yinran. Her eyes were closed, her breathing soft and steady. Sunlight spilled across the side of her face, tracing a clean outline. Her long eyelashes curved slightly upward, her nose was straight, and her lips formed a faint line. Han Lin silently judged her in his mind. There was no denying it. She was stunning. Far prettier than Chuyer, and not just by a small margin. Chuyer's beauty was that of a village belle, the finest in Han Village. But Nalan Yinran's beauty stood out anywhere she went. Yet he quickly dismissed the thought. What was he thinking? He was merely a poor young man who had not even stepped across the threshold of cultivation. To harbor any inappropriate thoughts toward her was nothing but asking for humiliation. Maybe someday, once he became powerful. He pulled his gaze away and turned toward the lake and mountains. A water bird skimmed low across the surface, its wingtip brushing the water and sending ripples outward, slowly fading toward the bank. As Han Lin watched the scenery, a surge of inexplicable ambition rose within him. At a sight like this, he simply had to compose a poem worthy of his identity as a transmigrator. He stood, clasped his hands behind his back, faced the lake, took a deep breath, and spoke in a clear, resonant voice. When viewed from afar, ridges and peaks unfold in varied hues. Nalan Yinran's eyes flew open. She twisted her head to stare at Han Lin, utterly astonished. This poor villager could recite poetry? Near and far, high and low, each shows a different shape. Oblivious to her reaction, Han Lin sank fully into the rhythm of recitation. He nodded along as he spoke, pacing slowly across the grass. Waterfalls plunged 3,000 feet from on high. His volume rose sharply on this line, and he waved an arm dramatically, just like a storyteller performing for a crowd, as if the Milky Way has fallen from the ninth heaven. When he finished the final line, he spread his hands in a concluding gesture and turned toward Nalan Yinran, his expression practically begging for praise. Nalan Yinran's surprise had turned into a complicated look. "Did you write that yourself?" "Of course." Han Lin patted his chest without the slightest twinge of guilt. "Well, don't you think verses like these belong only to heaven, rarely heard among mortals?" Nalan Yinran rolled her eyes, turned her head away, and closed her eyes once more. Vain fool. Undaunted by her cold response, Han Lin chuckled and sat back down on the grass. He was convinced she had been stunned by his poem and was simply too proud to compliment him. After all, Those lines belonged to Li Bai, the great Li Bai. How could they not be magnificent? Before long, restlessness took hold again. Wild flowers dotted the lakeshore, small yellow daisies and nameless purple blooms swaying in the wind. Han Lin stood, squatted down, and began picking them one by one. Once he held a large bouquet, he tiptoed over to Nalan Yinran. Her eyes remained closed, breathing steady, as if she were completely immersed in some state of meditation. Han Lin knelt and stuck each flower into the soil surrounding her, forming a ring. He moved carefully, afraid of making noise, glancing up every time he planted a bloom to watch for any reaction from her. She did not stir, not even a flutter of her eyelashes. He kept working. When the first ring was complete, he picked another handful and made a second outer circle. 2 layers of flowers encircled Nalan Yinran, splashes of yellow and purple contrasting against her pale robes, framed by the lake and mountains behind her. It made quite a picturesque scene. Han Lin planted the last flower, stood, brushed dirt from his palms, and stepped back to admire his handiwork. Nalan Yinran heard rustling beside her, but had no idea what the young man was up to. She was measuring the concentration of spiritual energy around the lake and could not be bothered to open her eyes. A good while passed before she finally lifted her lids. She froze. Rings of wild flowers circled her, 2 layers of yellow and purple blossoms trapping her in the center. She stared at the flowers at her feet, then looked up at Han Lin standing nearby. Han Lin folded his arms, tilted his chin upward, and wore an even more smug expression than he had while reciting poetry. His gaze clearly said, "Well, are you touched?" Nalan Yinran truly was surprised. This humble village youth had a romantic streak. She glanced again at the flowers around her. Sunlight glinted off, dew still clinging to the petals. They really were beautiful. She meant the flowers. Yet her words carried no warmth. Why bother with such frivolous decorations? Isn't this tedious? Han Lin's proud look crumpled halfway. He scratched the back of his head awkwardly. I just thought they looked nice. Nalan Yinran did not pull the flowers out, nor did she stand. She merely huffed softly and closed her eyes again. The 2 rings of wildflowers stayed where they were, encircling her. When sunset dyed the entire village amber, Han Lin and Nalan Yinran trundled back along the dirt path, one after the other. Nalan Yinran remained silent the whole way, staring forward with an impassive face, lost in thought. Han Lin walked half a step ahead, humming an off-key folk tune, swaying his head without noticing how badly he missed every note. Nalan Yinran frowned every few moments. No one could tell whether she was annoyed by his singing or something else entirely. They returned to the courtyard gate in this manner, one humming, one frowning. Bundles and sacks were piled all over the yard. Han Tai squatted on the ground sorting things, while Wang Guifan held a wooden slip covered in dense writing and checked each item one by one. They both looked up at the creak of the gate. When they saw Han Lin returning alongside Nalan Yinran, their expressions shifted simultaneously. Han Tai and Wang Guifan exchanged a glance. The unspoken question hung between them. Since when had these 2 grown so close? Neither dared ask aloud. "Welcome back, Miss Nalan." Wang Guifan set down her wooden slip and smiled. "It's good to get out for a walk. Staying cooped indoors all day gets stifling." Nalan Yinran gave a slight nod, her mouth twitching into a faint smile as acknowledgement. She walked straight to her room, pushed the door open, and shut herself inside. Han Tai's gaze drifted from the closed door to Han Lin. "Where did you take Miss Nalan?" Han Lin picked up a cloth sack for Wang Guifan. It felt heavy, likely filled with rice and flour. "I took her to see the lake behind the village. She wanted to view the scenery." Han Tai hummed and asked no further questions. Wang Guifan smiled as she unpacked bundle after bundle. 2 sets of bright red quilt covers were neatly folded, their fabric shimmering in the sunset light. Several bolts of red cloth, meant for new garments and decorating door frames. A sack of white rice, another of wheat flour, several caddies of pork, and 2 salted fish tightly wrapped in oil paper. Countless smaller items, red candles, red paper, new bowls and chopsticks spread across half the courtyard. "I've bought new quilt covers, enough red paper, and grain for 2 feast tables," Wang Guifan murmured as she counted, unable to hide her joy. Han Tai squatted beside her, rarely without a stern look, yet a smile tugged at his lips. 50 tales of betrothal money still pained him to think about. But how could a father not rejoice at his son's upcoming wedding? Han Lin stood with folded arms and cleared his throat. "Father, mother." Han Tai and Wang Guifan looked up together. Han Lin wore a serious expression, brows furrowed, as if about to bring up an important matter. "Have you forgotten something?" Han Tai and Wang Guifan glanced at each other, thoroughly confused. "Forgotten what?" Wang Guifan asked. Han Lin set down the sack and gestured toward the house. Where will Chuyer and I live after we marry? Silence hung in the air for a heartbeat. Then Han Tai slapped his thigh hard. He bit back a curse, yet his face spoke volumes. Wang Guifin also froze, nearly dropping the quilt cover in her hands. Of course, where would their son stay after marriage? The only decent room belonged to Nalin Yinran. Han Lin currently slept in a cramped side chamber barely large enough to turn around, hardly fit as a bridal chamber. Both parents stood rooted to the spot, stunned. What if? Wang Guifin hesitated. We give our room to Linner as the bridal chamber. We can move into the side chamber. Han Tai paused briefly, then nodded. It seems we have no other choice. Han Lin laughed at their pained expressions. No need for you two to move out. He told them about arranging for old Han San, Han Ergu's relative, to build an additional room and repair the old house's walls and roof. Construction would start tomorrow. Materials and labor would cost 20 taels in total. After finishing, he folded his arms and lifted his chin, waiting to see their delighted reaction. Han Tai and Wang Guifin were indeed overjoyed, their eyes lighting up. But as the joy faded, Han Tai's expression darkened. He turned to face Han Lin, the look in his eyes that of a man who had finally caught his son in a slip-up. 20 taels. Han Lin's smile faltered. I thought you said 60 taels total, 50 for the betrothal, plus 20 for the house, would make 70. Yesterday you told me everything would cost 60 taels. Han Lin's mouth twitched. Could it be you have close to 100 taels hidden away? No, absolutely not. Han Lin waved his hands frantically. It's still 60 taels, well, originally 70. I simply hadn't mentioned the money set aside for construction. 70. Wang Guifin joined in the questioning. 60 yesterday, 70 today. Will you say 80 tomorrow? Han Lin could find no retort and scratched his head with an awkward grin. Han Tai stared at him for a long moment before huffing and turning away. Very well. He squatted again to continue sorting the sacks. I'll let it slide this time. Wang Guifin shook her head and smiled, picking up the fallen quilt cover and brushing off dust. Though they pressed him with questions, they held no real anger. Their son had matured enough to set money aside for building a new home. The old Han Lin would have rushed to town to squander silver the moment he laid hands on it, never returning until every coin was gone. He would never have planned for housing, marriage, or cared for his family. Truly, the boy had changed after being struck by the wild boar. Relieved that his parents stopped pressing him, Han Lin quickly shifted topics. Let me help carry these sacks. Should this rice go into the kitchen? 7 or 8 days passed, neither long nor short. Yet those days brought dramatic changes to the Han household. Before dawn each morning, old Han San arrived with Han Ergu and 2 other laborers. Old Han San stood on the empty plot beside the main house, measured the ground with his feet, drew a square in the dirt using a branch, and waved to the 2 workers. Start digging here. Dig deep for the foundation. Do not cut corners. The 2 laborers, Han Daju and Han Shirtu, regular village workmen, raised their hoes and set to work. Old Han San grabbed an axe and circled the old house, checking every drafty adobe wall. He pried loose cracked sections to replaster them, drove stakes to reinforce shaky corners, and removed broken roof tiles to replace them with new ones. His movements were as sharp and efficient as his well-honed axe. Han Tai had intended to take time off work to assist, but old Han San sent him back to the fields. You'll only get in the way here. You might as well chop more firewood. We have enough hands. The expansion progressed faster than Han Lin expected. Adobe walls rose swiftly. Once wooden beams and roof tiles were laid, a brand new room stood attached to the main house in under 5 days, even half a head taller than the original structure. The walls and tiles were fresh, and though the window frames remained wooden, they fit tightly without creaking. On the day construction finished, Wang Guifin circled the new room repeatedly, touching the walls, tapping the window frames, and gazing up at the beams. Wrinkles on her face crinkled with delight. Han Lin stood in the doorway. He said nothing, yet could not suppress the smile tugging at his lips. The next day, Wang Guifin dragged Han Tai into town. They returned on an ox cart loaded with a large red wedding bed, a camphor-wood cabinet, a square table paired with 2 chairs. Red paper, red candles, and double happiness wedding characters covered every wall, and red ribbons hung from the door frames. The scarlet quilt covers spread across the bed glowed brightly in sunlight streaming through the windows. The atmosphere of the entire courtyard shifted completely. Han Lin stayed busy as well. Chuyer came to visit him every few days, sometimes helping his mother tidy the new bridal chamber, sometimes bringing him snacks, but most often simply coming to talk. They sat beneath the old locust tree. Chuyer leaned beside him, listening quietly as he rambled on about trivial things. Han Lin gestured wildly when he spoke, growing animated, and Chuyer listened peacefully, smiling softly from time to time, her eyes curving like crescent moons. Occasionally Han Lin fell silent mid-story and tilted his head to watch her. Growing shy under his gaze, Chuyer lowered her head and whispered, "What are you staring at?" "Looking at how beautiful you are." Chuyer blushed and pushed him gently, her touch lighter than cotton. The first time Han Lin took her to the lake behind the mountain, Chuyer hesitated, complaining the trail was rough. Han Lin simply grasped her hand and pulled her uphill. She told him to slow down, yet did not pull her hand away. After that, Han Lin held her hand every time they walked that mountain trail. Han Lin thought to himself more than once. He had once feared she had a fiery temper, yet she turned out to be gentle and sweet. The contrast stunned him. He cherished her deeply. Nalan Yanran, on the other hand, came and went unpredictably. Every other day or so, she traveled alone to the lakeside in the mountains, sitting cross-legged on the grass for hours with her eyes closed. Several times Han Lin visited the lake and spotted her far off, motionless as if asleep. But he knew she was awake. Once he crept closer, and when he was still 7 or 8 paces away, Nalan Yanran spoke without opening her eyes. "Stop right there." Han Lin remained in place for a while, grew bored, and wandered back home alone. He thought this young lady grew stranger by the day. Still, it did not concern him. She had paid him, so she could sit by the lake as long as she pleased. On the day the wedding notice was formally announced to the village, Wang Guifan pasted a red notice on the large locust tree at the village entrance, greeting every villager who passed by. "My son Liner is to marry Chuyer. We will host a feast in a few days. Everyone come and eat." News spread like wildfire, covering all of Han village by midday. Elderly villagers gathered beneath the locust tree and chatted for hours. Old Wang Guifan's boy, marrying Chuyer? Can I believe my ears? It's true. The red notice is still posted on the tree. Go see for yourself. Many families sought Chuyer's hand. Even the village chief's son proposed, yet her mother refused. Why choose that poor boy from the Han family? Who can say? Word is the Han household struck luck. A wealthy merchant relative came back to support them. Even so, Chuyer is as pretty as a flower. She could have married far better. Fate works in mysterious ways. Han Ergu was the most shocked of all. He witnessed everything firsthand. Han Lin recovering from his injury, suddenly coming into wealth, and becoming engaged to Chuyer. The whole sequence left him dumbfounded. These days, he frequently spotted Han Lin and Chuyer walking hand in hand along village dirt roads. Han Lin strode ahead with his head held high, Chuyer following beside him with lowered eyes, their hands tightly clasped. Anyone could see they were soon to be newlyweds. Han Ergu fell silent every single time the thought crossed his mind. One day, he squatted by the gate of his house eating. Holding his bowl, he took a couple of mouthfuls before suddenly setting the bowl down on the ground. "Father!" Han Laosen was squatting nearby sharpening an axe, not lifting his head. "What is it? Just look at Han Lin." A hard-to-describe tone of resentment lingered in Han Ergu's voice. "He's about to marry Chuyer. I don't even have anyone to propose to." Han Laosen paused sharpening the axe, glanced up at his son, then went back to his work. "He's got money. What do you have? Save enough betrothal gifts first." Han Ergu opened his mouth, then his shoulders slumped. "I work alongside you, yet you never pay me wages. Getting 3 meals a day is already more than you deserve." Han Ergu lapsed into silence. He picked his bowl back up and shoveled rice into his mouth fiercely, as if quarreling with the food. After finishing his meal, he set the bowl on the ground, wiped his mouth, and stood up. "I'm not going to work in the neighboring village with you tomorrow. I'm heading into town to find work." Han Laosen looked up at him, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but he said nothing more and simply nodded. "Very well. Just don't loiter around the pleasure quarters." For once, Han Ergu did not argue and replied sullenly. It had indeed been a long time since he went into town. He had not set foot there ever since Han Lin announced he would marry Chuyer. He used to run into town every few days to gaze at the gorgeously dressed young women. Now he thought about it. What was the point of staring if he could never get close to them anyway? Han Village was bustling that day, livelier than New Year. 2 strips of red cloth had been tied to the crooked jujube tree outside Han Lin's home. They fluttered in the wind, visible from far away. 2 large round tables stood in the courtyard, borrowed from neighbors, paired with stools gathered from every household. Though uneven, they looked presentable once covered with red cloth. Wang Guifan had gotten up before dawn to get things ready. She slaughtered chickens, cleaned fish, cut meat, and stirred dishes. She kept the stove fire burning nonstop. Han Tai helped out beside her, coughing constantly from cooking fumes. Yet a smile never left his face. Han Lin stood at the courtyard gate greeting guests, a large red flower pinned to his chest. The flower was enormous, only slightly smaller than his head. Woven from red silk, it hung heavy against his chest. It swayed as he walked. He smiled at everyone he met, grinning so wide his lips nearly reached his ears. Eventually his face grew stiff from smiling, yet he could not stop. Congratulations. Han Lin, you lucky man. Chui'er is the village beauty, and you've won her hand. Villagers streamed in one after another. Some came to offer sincere well wishes, others merely to watch the commotion. Quite a few still refused to believe the poor boy from Wang Guifen's family could marry Chui'er, coming specifically to see it with their own eyes. When Han Ergu arrived, he carried an old hen tied by its feet with straw rope. He held it upside down, making the bird thrash wildly. He shoved the hen into Han Lin's arms. Here, a wedding gift. Han Lin stared at the struggling hen, then looked up at Han Ergu. Before he could speak, Han Ergu cut in. Don't complain it's too little. This is the fattest hen from my coop. Han Lin smiled, handed the hen to Han Tai standing beside him, and clapped Han Ergu on the shoulder. Thanks. Come inside and take a seat. Han Ergu did not rush in. He stood by the gate and scanned the courtyard, his gaze settling finally on the doorway of the new bridal chamber. Big red double happiness characters were pasted on the door, red paper decorated the windows, and a red cloth curtain hung over the doorframe. He stared at the doorway for a long while. Curiosity turned to wistfulness, then unbridled envy. You rascal. He shook his head, his tone layered with indescribable emotion. You've really married Chui'er. Of course I have. Han Ergu fell quiet for a moment, then leaned closer and lowered his voice. Tell me the truth. Where did you get all that silver? Don't feed me stories about an uncle. Your mother only has one younger sister. You have no maternal uncle. Han Lin smiled mysteriously and patted his shoulder. Heaven's secret, not to be revealed. Han Ergu rolled his eyes and dropped the question. Shaking his head, he walked into the courtyard and found a place to sit. Inside the bridal chamber, Chui'er sat motionless under her red veil. This room had been built just for her. New walls, new tiles, red double happiness stickers on the windows, bedding covered in crimson satin, and even the candlesticks on the table wrapped with red cloth strips. She kept her head lowered, only able to see her hands resting on her knees and the red tassels dangling from the edge of her veil. Yet she could hear the noisy chatter outside. Sounds of drinking games, clinking cups, children's laughter, and adults exchanging greetings drifted in, half muted by the paper-covered door. She heard Han Lin's laughter. He had been laughing all day, loud enough for her to hear clearly through the door. Chui'er bit her lip, twisting the hem of her dress unconsciously with her fingers. Nalan Yinran stayed indoors all day. Noise had drifted over since early morning, drinking games, clinking goblets, children's shrieks, and the laughter of adults, surging through the wooden door and filling her small room. She sat cross-legged on the bed, her brows furrowed. The spirit stone in her grasp had dimmed by half. The racket outside was far too loud for her to settle into cultivation. She put the spirit stone away, leaned back against the headboard, and closed her eyes to rest. Yet her ears unconsciously tracked every sound outside. That boy Han Ergu was boasting about the beautiful women he had seen in town long ago. A drunken villager sang a folk tune, his melody drifting far into the hills. Wang Guifen shouted for Han Tai to carry dishes from the kitchen, and Han Tai knocked a plate against the doorframe as he walked. She did not step outside. This kind of gathering was no place for her. What would a cultivator look like jostling among mortals at a wedding feast? She pulled a spirit stone from her sleeve, twirled it between her fingers, then put it away again. She had lived here for quite some time. She ought to offer some token of celebration for the wedding. After thinking it over, she took out the spirit stone once more and set it beside her pillow. She would deliver it later that night. The feast lasted from midday until dusk. 3 rounds of dishes were served, 2 wine jars emptied. Several elderly guests took their leave first, while the rest continued playing drinking games. Han Lin had drunk a great deal. His face was as red as the large flower pinned to his chest. He stumbled slightly as he walked, though his mind remained clear. He went table to toast everyone. Han Ergu's table drank the heaviest, forcing him to gulp down 3 full bowls of wine. Afterward, Han Ergu slammed his palm on the table and demanded more. Han Lin forced himself to finish, then glared at him. Han Ergu roared with laughter. When night fell completely, the last batch of guests finally took their leave. Wang Guifen and Han Tai stood at the gate to see them off, repeating, "Take care," dozens of times until their throats grew hoarse. Han Lin moved to clear the tables, but Wang Guifen stopped him. "You are the groom today. Leave the chores to me and your father. Go keep Chui'er company." Han Lin grinned, set down the bowl he held, and walked toward the bridal chamber. His steps wavered, yet he knew exactly where he was going. Joy surged through him. After traveling to this world and enduring hardship and endless scorn for so long, he had finally married his bride. More importantly, the system would activate now. The fertility and blessing system. Grow stronger by starting a family. He had waited for this day endlessly. As he reached the bridal chamber door, he straightened the large red flower on his chest and drew a deep breath. He was ready to push open the door. Han Lin. He turned his head. Nailin Yinran stood in the shadow of the corridor. He had no idea when she had come out. She wore plain pale robes. Moonlight fell on her face, her expression calm, revealing no emotion. Congratulations. Han Lin stared in surprise, then broke into a grin. Thank you, Miss Nailin. Why didn't you come to the feast today? Nailin Yinran ignored the question. She pulled an object from her sleeve and held it out. A wedding gift. Han Lin took it and looked down. It was a thumb-sized blue crystal, transparent and shimmering. Something seemed to flow slowly deep inside it. It felt cool in his palm, the chill spreading up his wrist. It was pleasant, like holding ice that never melted. He turned it over and over, unable to figure out what it was. Jade? Crystal? He lifted his head to ask, but Nailin Yinran had already turned to leave. Thank you. Han Lin called toward her, retreating back. Nailin Yinran did not look back. She raised one hand to wave casually, pushed open her door, and vanished inside. Han Lin stared again at the blue crystal in his hand. Unable to guess its nature, he carefully tucked it inside his robe. The cool sensation pressed against his chest through the fabric, clearing his head considerably. He would figure it out later. What mattered most waited ahead. He pushed open the wooden door of the bridal chamber. A soft creak echoed, and warm red light washed over him. 2 red candles burned brightly on the table, bathing the whole room in warm crimson. Neatly arranged scarlet bedding lay on the bed. Double happiness characters covered the walls, and red paper cuttings decorated the windows. Chui'er sat on the edge of the bed, dressed in a bright red wedding gown, still covered by her red veil. She was quiet as a porcelain doll. Han Lin closed the door and slid the bolt shut. Silence settled in the room, broken only by occasional faint crackles from the candles. He walked over to Chui'er and chuckled. Chui'er twisted her fingers atop her knees. Han Lin reached out, grasped the 2 corners of the red veil, and slowly lifted it bit by bit. Beneath the candlelight, Chui'er's face came into view little by little. Her brows, eyes, nose, lips. She wore light makeup, looking even more delicate than usual. Her cheeks blushed, colored by either rouge or shyness. She glanced at Han Lin briefly before lowering her gaze again, her long eyelashes trembling gently in the candlelight. Han Lin lifted one hand to cup her chin, tilting her face upward so she would look at him. Chui'er met his gaze and saw Han Lin's overjoyed grin. She could not help twitching the corner of her mouth. Why are you smiling so strangely? Han Lin laughed aloud. Am I? Chui'er nodded firmly. You are. Han Lin shook his head hard to smooth away the odd grin, then put on a tender expression and stared into her eyes. Pay no mind to trivial details, my wife. Chui'er's ears flushed bright red, deeper than the candle flames on the table. It is time for us to rest. Chui'er lowered her head further, her chin nearly touching her chest. Then slowly, faintly, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. Han Lin walked to the window and pulled the curtains shut with a swish. The red candles burned all night, thick wax pooling on the table. Chui'er curled up under the quilt, her face flushed bright red, only her eyes visible as she looked at Han Lin. Han Lin rubbed his hands together and grinned. My wife. Chui'er pulled the quilt higher, covering even her eyes. Han Lin slipped under the covers. As he settled beside her, he frantically called out to the system in his mind. System? System, are you there? Time to activate. No response. Hello? Can you hear me? Say something. Still nothing. Panic flickered through Han Lin's mind. In all the novels he had read, fertility systems always sent notifications the moment the wedding night arrived. Why was his completely silent? Had it broken? This useless system, failing at the critical moment. Chui'er watched him, confusion slowly replacing her shyness. Why had he frozen all of a sudden? And what was that odd expression on his face? Brows knitted as if he had lost money. Han Lin sensed her stare and quickly forced a smile, shifting closer to her. In his mind, he kept calling desperately. System, system, system. Ding. Han Lin jolted. Finally, he had feared this shoddy system would never wake up. A translucent light screen unfolded in his mind, lines of text floating before him. Detected. Host may conceive offspring. Offspring enhancement available. Option 1. Consume 1 year of lifespan to grant offspring low-grade spirit root. Confirm. Han Lin's smile froze as he read the words. Consume lifespan? 1 year. He read the line repeatedly to make sure he had not misread. In every novel's fertility system, rewards poured in once children were born, cultivation breakthroughs, divine pills, powerful treasures, enough to send someone soaring toward immortality right after childbirth. His system demanded payment before any reward. 1 year of his life. How many years did a person have? His body did not look built for a long life. What if he exhausted his lifespan before having many children? That would be a terrible loss. Han Lin hesitated. Then he thought again. This would be his own child. He was already calculating costs before the child was even born. It sounded shameful to admit. Very well, 1 year it is. He chose this path himself. Besides, it was just a single year. He could make it up by living moderately later. Confirm. The words on the light screen shifted instantly. Confirmation successful. 1 year of lifespan consumed. Post remaining lifespan, 73 years. Upon the offspring's birth, 10 years of lifespan will be returned. Chance to trigger additional rewards. Han Lin's eyes widened sharply. Tenfold return? Spend 1 year, get 10 back? The more children he had, the longer he lived? This was no simple lifespan cost. It was an investment, an opportunity for massive gains. Others struggled and cultivated endlessly to seek immortality, while he could extend his life simply by building a family. What an incredible deal. The promise of additional rewards stoked his curiosity. The system did not specify what they would be, yet he knew instinctively they would be extraordinary treasures. Han Lin could not hold back any longer. He laughed out loud, a silly snickering sound, grinning widely. Chui'er had her eyes closed, lost in shyness, when she heard the strange laughter. She opened her eyes. Han Lin lay beside her, staring blankly into thin air, mouth hanging open, snickering nonstop. Confusion turned to worry on Chui'er's face. What was wrong with him? He had been distracted earlier, and now he was giggling for no reason. Had joy addled his mind? Husband. Han Lin did not react, still snickering. Husband. Han Lin snapped back to his senses. He saw Chui'er staring at him as if questioning his sanity. He quickly wiped the corners of his mouth and cleared his throat. Nothing, nothing. I just thought of something wonderful. Chui'er blinked, her worry not fading. Truly? You were laughing strangely just now. Truly. Han Lin patted her cheek and put on what he hoped was a gentle, charming smile. Let us rest, my wife. At his words, the blush that had faded surged back, staining her ears scarlet. She buried her face in the pillow and answered softly. Han Lin drew the quilt over them both. They stayed awake beside each other for hours. When they finally settled down, the red candle had burned to its base, wax piled high on the candlestick. The last flame flickered weakly and sputtered out. Chui'er curled up in Han Lin's arms. Her hair scattered across the pillow. The flush on her cheeks lingered, yet her eyes grew heavy with sleep. Han Lin was worn out too. His body was young, yet the long night took its toll. Combined with the wine he had drunk, his head swam, and his eyelids felt heavy. He pulled the quilt higher to cover Chui'er's bare shoulders and shifted closer, resting one hand gently at her waist. Chui'er mumbled something drowsily and snuggled deeper into his embrace. Her breathing slowed, steady and soft. Han Lin closed his eyes. His mind lingered on the system notification. Trade 1 year for 10, plus potential extra rewards. This system worked differently from those in stories, a little stingy at first glance, yet overall reliable. It was worth it. More than worth it. A smile tugged at his lips as he thought, and he drifted off to sleep, holding his wife in his arms. The next morning, Han Lin woke to the clattering of pots and pans. He opened his eyes to sunlight filtering through the red curtains, filling the room with warm crimson light. He glanced down. Chui'er still slept nestled against his chest, her face pressed to him, breathing softly, her eyelashes still. Han Lin stayed still, afraid to wake her. He listened carefully to the sounds outside. Wang Guofan's voice drifted from the kitchen, telling Han Tai to remove firewood because the flames were too high. Han Tai replied in a low rumble, followed by the clink of a spatula against a pan, the sizzle of oil, and the warm aroma of scrambled eggs drifting through the door cracks. Han Lin caught a whiff of the aroma, and his stomach suddenly rumbled loudly. Chui'er stirred, blinking awake slowly. She lifted her head and found Han Lin staring at her. Her cheeks flushed, and she ducked her head down again. Han Lin let out a soft laugh and reached out to ruffle her messy hair. Good morning, my wife. Han Lin pulled on his clothes and glanced back at Chui'er. She was struggling to tie her sash, her fingers clumsy. Twice she tied it crookedly. She looked up and saw Han Lin watching her, her face flushing once more. She lowered her head and mumbled quietly. Don't stare. Han Lin chuckled, walked over to retie her sash properly, then took her hand. Come, let's go eat. As the two pushed the door open and stepped out, Wang Guofan emerged from the kitchen carrying a plate of scrambled eggs. She spotted the young couple standing hand in hand at the doorway of the new room. Her footsteps paused, then a smile slowly spread across her face, the kind of knowing grin only a mother could wear. Hantai squatted beside the stove stoking the fire. He glanced up at them, then returned to adding firewood, yet the corners of his mouth twitched noticeably. Chuyer grew self-conscious under their gazes. She quickly let go of Han Lin's hand, stood straight and proper, and called out sweetly to Wang Guifan and Han Tai. Father, mother. Wang Guifan's hands trembled slightly as she held the plate. That single mother melted her heart completely. Once upon a time, Han Lin could barely bring himself to call her mother, and now his new daughter-in-law greeted her so warmly on her first day in the household. The contrast was so stark she could hardly adjust. "Aye, wonderful, wonderful." Wang Guifan's eyes crinkled into slits from smiling. She set the scrambled eggs on the table and wiped her hands on her apron. "Sit quickly, you must be hungry." Chuyer took a seat at the table and widened her eyes at the spread of food. Thick congee steamed in bowls, golden scrambled eggs glistened with oil. Neatly sliced pickled radish sat on a dish, and the leftover braised pork from the wedding feast had been reheated, glossy and rich. She picked up her bowl, carefully lifted a piece of scrambled egg to her mouth, chewed, and her eyes lit up. She really could eat white rice. She really could have meat. Her husband had not lied to her. She remembered Han Lin's words beneath the old locust tree. From now on, we'll have white rice every day. Back then, she had doubted him, but now she saw it was true. Chuyer stole a glance at Han Lin, unable to hold back the upward tug of her lips. Han Lin was shoveling rice into his mouth. Sensing her gaze, he looked up, cheeks stuffed full, and mumbled indistinctly. "What is it?" "Nothing." Chuyer lowered her head, smiled behind her lips, and took a big mouthful of rice. Mid-meal, Nanlon Yinran's door creaked open. She stepped out, swept her gaze across the table, lingering a moment longer on Chuyer. Then she walked over and sat down with an impassive expression. Chuyer's chopsticks stilled. She looked at Nanlon Yinran, then turned to Han Lin, confusion clear in her eyes. Who was this woman? Han Lin reacted instantly. He rolled his eyes, leaned close to Chuyer's ear, and lowered his voice. "This is my cousin, my maternal uncle's daughter. She's the one who lent our family silver. Don't offend her, understand?" Realization dawned on Chuyer, her mouth falling open into a small circle before she nodded hastily. She secretly studied Nanlon Yinran. Her gown was woven from fabric so smooth it shimmered. A hairpin Chuyer could not name, yet plainly expensive, rested in her hair. Her fingers were as pale and tender as peeled eggs. She carried an aura that simply did not belong to this shabby village. So this was the cousin. No wonder she was so wealthy. And she was breathtakingly beautiful. Wang Guifan sat down with a bowl of congee, and Han Tai took the last seat. The whole family gathered around the table, steam rising from the bowls, shrouding each face in soft haze. Han Tai slurped his congee loudly, like an ox drinking water. Wang Guifan kicked him under the table, and he quieted down. Chuyer sipped her congee slowly, glancing at the others at intervals. It all felt like a dream. Just yesterday, she had tossed and turned on the hard bed at her parents' home, wondering if she truly would get white rice every day after marrying. Today, she sat right here, eating congee, scrambled eggs, and braised pork. Her parents-in-law looked a little stern, yet they treated her politely, even speaking more softly than usual. Her husband was prone to silly grins, but he treated her well, genuinely well. At the thought, she bowed her head, smiling again. Nanlon Yinran ate quickly. She finished her bowl of congee in a few bites, barely touching any dishes. She set down her bowl, stood up, and turned to walk outside. Chuyer watched her retreating back and leaned toward Han Lin, whispering, "Where's cousin going?" Han Lin did not lift his head as he picked up a chunk of braised pork. "She's going to admire the scenery." "Does she go every day to look at the view?" "More or less." Han Lin chewed the meat and replied vaguely, "My cousin is quite artistic. She likes sitting by the lake lost in thought." Chuyer blinked, hesitated for a moment, then tugged at Han Lin's sleeve. "Can I go see it too?" Han Lin glanced at her and smiled. "Let's go then." He drained the last of his congee in one gulp, wiped his mouth, and took Chuyer's hand to head outside. Hand in hand, they followed the path behind the village, passing through the pine woods, and soon caught sight of the lake. Nanlon Yinran was already there. She sat cross-legged on the grass, her back straight, eyes closed, motionless, as if she had blended into the landscape. Han Lin easily found a spot not too close nor too far away and pulled Chuyer down to sit beside him. Chuyer settled next to him and stared at the lake and hills, her mouth slightly agape. Sunlight spilled over the water, scattering like countless shards of silver, dazzling to behold. Several waterbirds paced along the shallow shore, their long legs dipping into the water. Every now and then they dipped their heads, pecking at something beneath the surface. "It's gorgeous," Chuyer murmured softly. Han Lin tilted his chin up proudly. "Of course. I'm the one who found this place." Chuyer leaned her shoulder against his and pointed at the distant water birds. "What kind of birds are those?" "Water birds. That's obvious. I know they're water birds." "What sort of water birds?" Han Lin squinted and stared for a long while. "Probably white water birds." Chuyer giggled and shoved him lightly. "You don't know anything. I'm not a bird catcher, after all." They bantered back and forth, their voices carrying just far enough to reach Nanlong Yinran's ears. Nanlong Yinran kept her eyes closed, but her brows creased almost imperceptibly. Then they furrowed again. Her ears were forced to receive every word they exchanged. Remarks about how pretty a flower was, pleas for him to pick it, playful bickering, and his eventual agreement. Every syllable drifted clearly to her. She took a deep breath, trying to tune out the noise. It was no use. Then soft laughter drifted over. Gentle as it was, in this quiet lakeside, it was as loud as a trumpet blaring beside her ear. Nanlong Yinran's frown deepened. She opened her eyes and glanced toward them. Han Lin was tucking a small wildflower into Chuyer's hair. Chuyer bowed her head to let him, her ears red, unable to contain her smile. The pair sat amid wildflowers, sunlight wrapping around them like a scene from a painting. Nanlong Yinran looked away and shut her eyes once more. Yet her brows stayed furrowed. Chuyer squatted by the lake, peering at her reflection in the water. A floral wreath sat atop her head, and she smiled as sweet as honey. Han Lin had woven it just moments before, stringing wildflowers into a circle. The colorful blossoms complemented her red dress beautifully. "Husband, look, there are fish in the water." Chuyer pointed. Several small crucian carp slipped out from between the stones, darting back into hiding when she startled them. Han Lin knelt beside her, delighted by her joy. He glanced over at Nanlong Yinran again. She remained seated cross-legged on the grass, eyes closed, back rigid. But her brows were drawn tighter than ever. Han Lin had spent enough time around her to pick up a pattern. The deeper her frown, the worse her mood. An idea crossed his mind. He wove another flower crown, stood up, and crept quietly toward Nanlong Yinran. Nanlong Yinran heard his footsteps, but kept her eyes shut. A single set of footsteps was not enough to interrupt her cultivation. Then something settled lightly on her head. Nanlong Yinran's eyes flew open. She reached up and touched soft, damp petals. She pulled it off to see a flower crown, identical to Chuyer's. She lifted her head and glared fiercely at Han Lin, as if she might twist his head off and weave it into another wreath. "What are you doing?" Han Lin spread his hands, putting on the most innocent expression imaginable. "Nothing much. I made one for you too. Isn't it pretty?" Nanlong Yinran stared at him for several heartbeats without speaking. Then she stood, holding the crown, and walked slowly to the lakeshore. She glanced down at her reflection rippling on the water. The outline was blurred, yet discernible. Wildflowers circling her head, yellow, purple, red, paired with her plain robe. It was not unattractive. "It's passable." She took the crown off her head and spoke in a flat tone, as if commenting on the weather. Chuyer craned her neck to watch from a distance. Upon hearing her reply, she trotted over with a grin. "More than passable. You look far lovelier wearing it than I do, cousin." The corners of Nanlong Yinran's mouth twitched. The movement was tiny, barely noticeable, yet she had smiled. Still, the faint expression vanished in less than half a second, replaced by her usual cold demeanor. She carried the crown back to her spot, sat down again, and set it beside her knees. Chuyer missed the fleeting smile. She had already run off, chasing a butterfly with blue wings across the meadow. "Husband, help me catch it." Han Lin rolled up his sleeves and gave chase. The two darted back and forth across the grass until Han Lin threw himself forward and trapped the butterfly beneath his palm. Carefully pinching its wings, he held it out to Chuyer. Chuyer leaned in to watch. The butterfly's wings opened and closed, delicate blue veins shimmering in the sunlight. "It's stunning." She admired it for a while before opening her hand. The butterfly fluttered away, circling them twice, then flew toward the far bank of the lake. Chuyer leaned against Han Lin's shoulder, gasping for breath. Her cheeks flushed from running and happiness alike. Han Lin slipped an arm around her waist. They stood beside the lake, behind them a field full of wild blooms, their shadows stretched long by the sun. Nanlong Yinran opened her eyes and watched their silhouettes, breathing out a quiet sigh. The sound was so faint she barely caught it herself. Just two mortals. They could laugh for hours over a single flower, race until they were sweaty chasing a butterfly, and linger admiring their reflections with a flower crown. Their happiness was so simple she could scarcely comprehend it. Once, she had known such simple joys too. But that had been a very long time ago. Now she was a cultivator. Time flowed differently for cultivators and mortals. A mortal's life spanned merely 70 to 80 years. Birth, farming, meals, marriage, raising children, and generations would pass. For her, reaching foundation establishment alone could take countless years. Refining, foundation establishment, golden core, nascent soul, each stage demanded decades, even centuries of relentless practice. By the time she succeeded in forming her foundation, Han Lin would likely be an old man. When she attained the golden core, grass would already grow over Han Lin's grave. Not to mention Chuyer. She and this family did not belong to the same world after all. She was only staying here temporarily, hiding from trouble. Once the matter died down, she would depart. Then they would go their separate ways. She would pursue her cultivation, and they would tend their fields. Their acquaintance, bought with 120 taels of silver, would end there. She ought not grow too attached to them. She certainly ought not to care about the flower crown that poor young man had woven for her. Nanlong Yinran glanced down at the wreath beside her knees. The wildflowers were already wilting, petals curling at the edges, their colors fading. She reached out to toss it aside. Her hand halted halfway, and she pulled it back. Let it stay. It was no trouble. She looked away from the crown and closed her eyes again. Spiritual energy drifted slowly off the lake, thin and scarce. She absorbed it bit by bit, like trying to scoop water with a sieve. Annoying. Yet there was nothing she could do. She drew a deep breath, suppressing all stray thoughts, sinking back into the rhythm of cultivation. Sometime later, Han Lin and Chuyer sat down nearby, heads tilted close as they whispered, quiet laughter drifting over every so often. Nanlong Yinran's brows creased once more. This time, she did not sigh. A month passed, neither rushing nor dragging. Every morning when Han Lin woke, the first thing he did was glance at Chuyer's stomach. Flat. He looked again, and it remained flat. Worry gnawed at him, though he tried not to show it too openly. He silently called out in his mind, System, pull your weight. One early morning, Wang Guifan prepared breakfast as usual. Chuyer sat at the table and lifted her bowl, only to suddenly frown, clamp a hand over her mouth, and rush outside. Wang Guifan's chopsticks froze midair. She exchanged a glance with Han Tai, and both of their eyes lit up. Han Tai set down his bowl and hurried out. Before long, he returned dragging Old Man Sun, the village's only physician skilled at pulse diagnosis. Old Man Sun rested his fingers on Chuyer's wrist, sensing her pulse with half-closed eyes. Eventually he opened them and smiled, cupping his hands in congratulations. Congratulations to the Han household. This is a pregnancy pulse. Han Tai stood frozen for a moment, then slapped his thigh hard. Excellent. The shout sent dust drifting down from the roof beams. Wang Guifan immediately snatched every chore out of Chuyer's hands. Leave that bowl, I'll wash it. Don't touch that laundry, I'll handle it. Stay seated, I'll sweep the floor. Chuyer stood beneath the courtyard jujube tree, watching her mother-in-law bustle about, uncertain what to do. Every time she reached out to help, Wang Guifan pushed her hands back. You're carrying 2 lives now. You must not tire yourself. Han Tai kept busy as well. That very day he grabbed an axe and headed for the mountains, vowing to cut the finest timber to carve a cradle for his future grandson. He hummed an old, off-key tune as he walked. No one had the heart to tell him how badly he sang. Chuyer sat under the jujube tree and stroked her stomach. It was still flat, yet she could feel something new growing inside her. A tiny, soft life, not yet fully formed. She smiled softly. Nanlong Yinran stepped out of the house, just in time to see Chuyer touching her belly beneath the tree. Her footsteps paused, and she walked over to stand before her. Chuyer stood up quickly when she saw her. Cousin, sit. Nanlong Yinran waved her hand, glanced at Chuyer's stomach, and the corners of her lips lifted faintly. Congratulations. Her tone remained cool, but the smile was genuine. Chuyer blinked, then smiled, her eyes curving like crescent moons. Thank you, cousin. Han Lin stood in the courtyard with hands on his hips, watching the scene, brimming with pride. Then he thought of the system. The system had not sent any notifications for some time, but he did not care. Chuyer was with child. He was going to be a father. Whether the system acknowledged it or not, this baby was his. I'm going to be a father. He stood in the courtyard and suddenly let out a loud laugh. The old hens in the yard flapped their wings and fled in fright. A few days later, news reached Han Lin's ears. Han Ergu was getting married. Han Lin heard the news while chopping firewood in the yard. He set down his axe and stared blankly for a long moment. Han Ergu? The same Han Ergu who often dragged him into town to wander the streets and seek amusement? Marrying someone. He sprinted toward Han Ergu's home. When he arrived, Han Laosen squatted in the yard sharpening an axe, in exactly the same posture as when Han Lin had come to ask him to repair the house last time. Uncle San, where's Ergu? Han Laosen did not lift his head. Inside, trying on his wedding robes. Han Lin stepped into the room and saw Han Ergu standing before a cracked mirror, clad in a bright red groom's robe. The robe was a little too long. Its hem dragged on the ground, and the sleeves covered the tips of his fingers. It was clearly borrowed and ill-fitting. But Han Ergu wore it with complete earnestness, twisting this way and that before the mirror, unable to tear his eyes away from his reflection. Han Lin. Catching sight of him in the mirror, Han Ergu spun around and spread his arms to show himself off. What do you think? Han Lin looked him up and down, struggling to hold back his laughter. Sharp-looking. Just sharp-looking? Extremely sharp-looking. Satisfied, Han Ergu rolled up his sleeves twice, walked over and clapped Han Lin on the shoulder, his pride shining plainly on his face. Bet you didn't see this coming. You've only been married to Chui'er for a month, and I'm about to take a wife too. I truly didn't, Han Lin replied honestly. Han Ergu let out a hearty laugh and leaned in, lowering his voice. Truth be told, you inspired me. Watching you walk around the village hand in hand with Chui'er every day kept me tossing and turning at night. So you pestered your father to arrange a match for you. Exactly. Han Ergu thumped his chest. I told him, look at Han Lin. He's already married to Chui'er, and I don't even have a bride. Doesn't he owe it to mother? I badgered him for days before he finally relented and sent a matchmaker to speak with Butcher Zhang's family. Butcher Zhang's daughter. A round-faced girl popped into Han Lin's mind. She had sturdy arms, rosy cheeks, a loud, clear voice, and her laughter could be heard all down the street. He remembered her name was Chunni. She was not considered one of the prettier girls in the village, but she was down to earth and quick with work. Chunni is a fine match, Han Lin said. Han Ergu grinned. I think so too. She may not be as pretty as your Chui'er, but she's strong and capable of hard work. Last time I went to Butcher Zhang's to buy meat, she chopped clean through a bone with one swing of her cleaver. Right then I thought, this girl's something special. Han Lin's mouth twitched. Brother, you certainly have a unique way of judging people. He kept the thought to himself, however. Different people have different tastes. If Han Ergu liked her, that was all that mattered. Standing beside Han Lin, Chui'er smiled and offered her congratulations to Han Ergu. Han Ergu scratched his head, uncharacteristically sheepish. Well, sister-in-law, please look after Chunni later, and you two should visit one another often. Chui'er nodded with a smile. Don't worry, Brother Ergu. At the sound of Brother Ergu, Han Ergu felt light as air, standing there grinning like a sunflower. During the wedding feast, Han Ergu went from table to table offering toasts. By the time he reached Han Lin's table, his face was flushed dark red from alcohol. He plopped down next to Han Lin, slung an arm over his shoulder, and breathed out fumes of wine. His expression suddenly turned reflective. Han Lin, I've got something heartfelt to say to you. Go on. Han Ergu fell quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts, then drained a mouthful of wine in one gulp. I won't go into town just to gaze at young women anymore. Han Lin lifted his wine bowl and clinked it against his. I won't either. They met each other's gaze and burst into laughter. Chunni turned her head, watching them in confusion, then turned back to chat with Chui'er. Han Ergu gazed at Chunni's profile, and the light in his eyes softened. I have a wife of my own now. His tone was nothing like his usual self when he spoke. There was no boastfulness, no bravado, only quiet sincerity. It sounded almost as if he were speaking to himself.